It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here, Richard Campbell. Microsoft is a $4 trillion company. We'll tell the story of how they got there. We'll also talk about Microsoft's vision for Windows in 2030. Plus a little AI news, Xbox news, and some whiskey you shouldn't buy. All that coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 944, recorded Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. Shakin the Treats. It's time for Windows Weekly. Hello, all you winners. Hello, all you dozers. Good to see both of you. Not all two of you, all of you. This is the show where we talk about the latest from Microsoft, and my golly, my gosh. It's a wonderful time to say hello to Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com.
It's a wonderful life.
It's a wonderful life. Are you back in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Delighted.
He doesn't seem so
How did
happy.
that happen? I don't know. It was a 20-hour day of terribleness. That's
Why
how it
come
happened.
back is what I'm saying.
Because my daughter is graduating from college this week.
Oh, that's exciting. That's this week?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
It
That's
only happens
wonderful.
once, in theory.
And there is next to Paul, shoulder to shoulder, rubbing elbows, even though he's in Canada, Mr. Richard Campbell from Madeira Park, British Columbia. Hello, Richard.
Where it's a dark, it's kind of a misty, rainy.
Oh, yeah,
kind of
Richard.
grim.
Thank you for mentioning that. Sorry. Thanks for all the dust and orange sun that I'm experiencing in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
I asked
That's
my
coming
wife
down
why it
from
was so
the East
freaking
Coast.
weird outside, and she said,
Not us.
Canada.
No, yeah.
Blame
Canada. Could you stop burning, please?
We got a lot of forests. I
Blame
actually,
Canada.
I checked the numbers for BC alone, and it was 135 forest fires running right now.
Jeez.
Are you going for the Guinness Book of World Records? What are we doing?
We got a lot of trees. What can I tell you?
Well-
now you do. I mean,
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
raining
and-
today, so I'm not.
I fear that this will be headed our way soon because, we're coming into the bush.
if it gets to
season
Mexico,
too.
it's all over, man. Then you're out of the continent. Like, I don't know.
But Mexico City is in a swamp. That might protect it.
If it was 2,000 years ago. Now it's in a,
It's all filled in.
I don't know, what do you call it?
It's landfill,
It's
which
a-
is a solid.
Let's build something on top of a hole.
So Microsoft became the second company in the history of all mankind to become a $4 trillion enterprise.
Yeah. And it was all thanks to Windows and Xbox, baby. Oh, wait.
We were talking about yesterday on MacBreak Weekly, Apple's earnings, and I said, if Apple could just get AI together, they might make some money.
Hey, speaking of which, I don't know why this isn't kind of a bigger story, but Google's earnings or revenues were were they more than they might have exceeded Apple's.
They had an incredible quarter. They did exceed Apple's by several
Okay, so
billion.
I'm not saying that has never happened before, but I mean, in recent years, if you look at revenues, like they've been kind of competing with Microsoft. They're both, Apple and Google, now like 20 billion above Microsoft in revenues. Like I believe Google was more, and it's like that's actually pretty unusual. They don't have a lot of relatively low margin hardware products to worry about. At least none of the sell well. So, I mean, I don't know. There's an interesting case to be made that Google might have, at least for now, dodged the AI bullet in a way, which is kind of interesting. But
I think
AI
I like
is,
Apple's coming in late. This is smart. However unintentional it was, everybody else has rushed and is getting
You think
questionable
Apple
results.
really? That was smart on Apple's part.
well,
I think they were trying. They just did. They pushed back.
The question is whether Apple's historical model for success will play out here as well. I guess, right?
And
we'll
last
talk about
year
what
they were
this-
trying to be a fast mover, and it did not.
That was-
To Apple's credit, what they didn't do was ship a bad product.
It's like, who's done this best? The guys that made Duke Nukem Forever? Yeah, let's try that. Well, that was a mistake. Anyway, but this is going to come up. I think Apple's going to be okay.
Yeah,
I think maybe. Who knows? I don't think it hurts them actually to be a little behind in AI. To be honest,
I mean, we'll see.
Nobody's not going to buy it. Well, here's the question: do you think somebody will not buy an iPhone and will buy a Google phone instead? Because
listen, people have been buying iPhones for decades almost. Despite the fact that Siri has always been a joke. So how is this any different? It's like, this is, if anything, the AI capabilities that they have now in Apple Intelligence are at least okay, like they work or whatever. So it's no big deal. It's not like Apple's ever harmed other app makers that they compete with or anything. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Anyhow.
They'll be all right. Now let's talk about Microsoft.
Yeah, at least for a little while. So last week, right at the end of the show, Microsoft reported their quarterly earnings. And then after that, they had an earnings call like they do every quarter. And this was one for the ages. So just to start with the earnings, no huge surprises here. Made a lot of money. Made a lot of money in the quarter. Made a lot of money in the fiscal year, which ended June 30. The revenue numbers quarterly almost $282 billion. I'm sorry,
Wow.
is that the right? That seems wrong.
282 for the year.
For the year. I'm mixing up numbers all over the place.
With a net of over 100.
Yeah. Sorry.
$100 billion.
Net for the year, 101, almost 102 billion. Sorry, I was looking at the annual there. And then, so the quarter was 27.2 billion in net income on revenues of 76.4 billion. These are double-digit increases year over year. It's big. I don't remember when this was. So it might have been, actually, they probably said they were going to do this before the beginning of this past fiscal year, but they, at some point last fiscal year, moved all of the revenues that are from Windows 10 through Windows anything, through Microsoft 365 into productivity and business processes, which is where the rest of Microsoft 365 was. So that has been their biggest business since then. And it still is, right? So 33.1 billion. But Intelligent Cloud, which is Azure, huge growth, 26% year over year, almost the same number, 29.9 billion. And we got some interesting numbers there, which we'll discuss in a moment, for the first time ever, which I think is amazing. And then more personal computing, which is, where everything else kind of falls. So the rest of Windows, Xbox, I think Search might be Search is in there. It's still stuck in that 13 billion range, so 13.5 billion.
A mere 13.
Yeah. Well, it's been there for a long time, though. There was a period of time where the three businesses were each about 10 to 11 billion, and they were kind of neck and neck each quarter. Mm-hmm. And then the clouds, the cloud stuff is what just broke out like big time. And for a long time, it was Intelligent Cloud, which is Azure, and then more recently, it's been the Microsoft 365 bit because of that revenue shift. But
and to be clear, underneath of 365 is also Azure. So not from a revenue perspective, but in the end, Microsoft has become a cloud company. And the revenues reflect it.
Yeah, I was going to say 100%, but it's more like 75, 85%, but I mean, yes, obviously that's the focus. Yeah. So, okay. So without knowing any of those numbers, I mean, I think we all knew the quarter was going to be pretty good. And one of the questions was, what was their CapEx spend, which is their AI infrastructure spending? They were talking about how they were going to spend 80 billion in this fiscal year. That fiscal year is concluded. I, at one point, had pointed out that this number was actually going up. And they did end closer. I think it was about 85 billion for the year. But one of the big bits they brought out in that post-earnings conference call was that number is actually going to go up dramatically for this fiscal year. So for this current quarter, it's going to be at least $30 billion. Wow. And yeah, it's crazy. So
isn't that nice to just know you've made more than $1 billion a week?
Yeah. And when you look at
what do you do with that money?
Well, you invest it in AI, Leo. And
that's true.
And the thing is, it's like, big tech, and Apple, Apple does actually give a CapEx number. We're going to talk about that in a little while, but Apple is always been and still is far behind the other companies when it comes to things like R&D and in this case, investing in AI infrastructure, but they are spending on that stuff. But Google and Amazon and Microsoft, especially, like the three combined is like the net worth of every company, every country on earth except for the United States or something. Like it's an incredible sum that they're spending.
It's starting to become that sort of William Gibson-esque, corporate world where that's right. This is country money.
Yep. What was the company from the Alien movies? Not Nakatomi.
Oh yeah.
Something with an N.
Chat room will do it. Nora. I confuse it with the one in Die Hard.
That's exactly right.
Nakatomi.
Nakatomi is Die Hard.
Nakatomi's that's
what's the alien one?
Now that I hear that, I can't.
Weyland-Yutani.
Weyland-Yutani. Kev Brewer nailed it.
Okay, Weyland-Yutani. Oh, I thought it was going to be different. Okay, but yes, that is it. So. We're living in, are better this, like, is that better than Skynet? Yeah, probably a little bit. But
is anything better than Skynet? Nothing's better than Skynet.
Is anything not better? I don't know. Anyway. These companies are spending a lot. But the big thing for me heading into this call was, how or if they would address the layoffs, and I got the vibe from all of the unprecedented hard numbers that Microsoft provided, literally for the first time in many cases ever, that it was like a hand-waving thing, like, there are no layoffs. These are not the layoffs you're looking for. Look at all these other things, And it wasn't until I think it was the very last question in the Q&A at the very end where someone finally asked about it. But basically, Microsoft, first of all, under Satya Nadella, has been laying off employees from the beginning. This is actually something that's been fairly consistent. I only went back a little while, but looking at my own stories from Thurrott.com, I mean, there were at least so far this year, there have been 3 rounds of layoffs, big round, meaningful rounds. Last year, there were 3. In the previous year, they laid off 10,000 employees all at one time. I mean, so it's it's not unprecedented. Of course, the way they've gone about it is a little tough, right? We've talked about this. And, the first wave were all allegedly performance-based. It still caught people by surprise in some cases because there were employees who had been warned ahead of time that they were on the line here and maybe you should improve.
And it turned a corner.
But they had looked back over a wider period of time and still got laid off. So that was deflating, obviously. And then there was the May layoffs, which were incredible and terrible. And we talked about that at length and the experiences we had in Seattle. And then, of course, the what were going to be the June layoffs, which turned into the July layoffs, because Microsoft wanted to announce this Xbox portable gaming platform without undermining it with news of layoffs, but several thousand more layoffs.
Because that's fine for build, but not fine for Xbox.
Well, yeah, that's you learn. You learn your lesson.
You would hope.
I mean, but also like they never should have done what they did in May. But okay.
One of the themes I hear over and over again, especially lately, is that this was not about reducing headcount or saving money. This is about changing the culture.
Yeah.
Of we want to be number one. Right. The company has made a very comfortable business of being number 2 in everything.
Yep.
And now Satya wants something different.
Now they're getting aggressive. All right. I mean, look, theoretically, that sounds great. And as does, something like, well, we're reducing layers of management. You're like, excellent. Yeah. That is it's a good goal. But again, it's been kind of brutal. And by the way, I think the number so far this year is 17,000 employees, right? Which in a company the size of Microsoft, right? 250, whatever the number is they have now employees. It's a meaningful number. Percentage wise, it's small. And Microsoft made the point in that conference call that they are essentially the same size from headcount today as they were a year ago, which is kind of like a weird
that's
moment.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's not what you expect. Right. Some of this, obviously some layoffs are going to result in maybe employees finding obviously positions in other companies, but also I suppose they could get positions elsewhere in Microsoft or be doing something different. I mean,
yeah, I've seen a lot of hire backs.
Yeah. It's a big complex company. If they can reduce some of that complexity, yes, that makes sense. But
I got to tell you, I ran across one lady who will remain nameless, who was let go in May and rehired within a couple of weeks, and then was let go again in July.
Yes, yes.
And has been rehired again.
Boy. Well, she
I
likes
just wonder
roller
what her
coasters,
mental
I guess.
state is like. Like,
Yeah.
what's that
How
do to
horrible.
you?
You feel like a ping pong ball.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, I have two minds because on the one hand, it's horrible for the people who experience it.
Yep.
But on the other hand, is it Microsoft's responsibility to, I mean, it's ultimately their responsibility to be a well-run, profitable enterprise.
The question is, does this make it a more well-run company or not?
If it doesn't, then they're failing their stakeholders and they should stop.
And that's
But
gonna
given
take
that
time for
they've
to
had a
find
pretty
out.
successful quarter,
That's the thing. When you hear like Intel is laying people off and streamlining, you're like, yep, this totally makes sense. You guys,
yeah, because they're failing.
you're
Yeah.
failing.
Maybe you want to
much-
do it before you fail.
That's still the tough one. It's look, this company's been around for a long time. A lot of these employees have still been around for a long time. It's possible that a lot of these people are in parts of the company that aren't the way forward, you know, that they're part of the past. And
Which
and
I mean, it's always
literally.
horrible. I've been laid off. It's not a good
no,
thing. And I've had to
no,
lay
of
people
course.
off, by the way. It's never a happy thing for anybody involved.
So the question, you rephrase the question, which is how much more money have they made if they hadn't demoralized the whole company?
The demoralization that's a very good point. Yeah, there is a company morale issue as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Yes. I'm not sure we could measure that explicitly, but it's
When we've had to cut back and lay people off, it's terrible for morale. But the alternative in our case, not Microsoft's case, was laying everybody off and going home. So
yeah.
it's not something you ever want to do.
I've done this as well, and also seen that the folks that were left stepped up. That because we were clear why we were doing it and what the goal was and how we did our selections. You know, as hard as
so hard.
Yeah, okay, so which is not what just happened, and
Which is not at all what happened.
what Microsoft needs right now. I would say pretty badly. And again, there's no
But
suffering
Satya
here.
put out that letter that said nothing other than I acknowledged that some of you are upset.
I might have said this when you were gone. I guess I probably did because
You should
the way I
not be
described
speaking
this.
when I'm not here. That's,
Well,
clear.
I've said this about Satya Nadella a lot, but that memo is a great example. Put it into Word, ask it to generate a summary, and it just says this page intentionally left blank. Like there's no, it boils down to no words. You know, it starts off with like hearts and prayers and kind of thoughts and prayers or whatever, and kind of goes from there. And it's like it's just not. It just doesn't say much.
Yeah.
Although I did get that the three, they've said it before, but succinctly put, Microsoft's focus going forward is, and in this order, hilariously, security, quality, and the first time I said this out loud, I couldn't get through it. I was laughing too hard. And AI transformation. So, yeah, okay. Again, viable goals, I guess, if you're into generalities. But okay, but let's get specific because this was what made this earnings call fun. Microsoft, for the first time in history, told us what the revenues of Azure were. So
Is that because they were finally more than Amazon? Is that what this is?
I think so, but I think it was more like layoffs, Azure revenues, and everyone's like, "Oh," because like analysts probably went into this call with whatever questions, and then they just started talking, and they were like, "Wait, what?" And sure enough, the next 8 guys, the first 8 people or whatever, just talked about this. It was like, "Are you kidding me?"
So it worked.
So I have a question for you, more math centric folks.
42. Oh, sorry.
You're pretty close, actually. So the number for the fiscal year that just ended was $75 billion in revenues. Now, we know that this is a certain percentage more than the previous year, which means we can compute what that is. So, for example, I figured out a 34% jump in revenues means that Azure made $56 billion in revenues in fiscal year 2024. Now, they have been reporting that number forever. So someone, if they wanted to, and they didn't value their time, could keep going back and saying, what's 40% of this? What's 70% of this? What's this? And now, because it's revenues, we're never going to get to zero, right?
Right.
It will be 0.000 something at some point, but we're never going below zero. But we could kind of figure out like when Azure actually became a meaningful business revenue-wise. and then compare it to when they were talking about it like it was, and I bet you'd find there's a 5 to 8 year gap.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of that alone is fascinating. Because there was no stated reason for saying it now. If you kind of just look at their earnings and compare them to, a year ago, 2 quarters ago, whatever, there's no big difference. It's like, why now? We don't know. But I suppose part of it might be tied to the CapEx spending and trying to get ahead of that, because ultimately that spending, which is about AI, is directly related to Azure as well, right? Because that's where a lot of their AI infrastructure lies. So that could have played a role. Maybe that was why, but they didn't really say that, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So that was the first big one, but there were actually several more, right? So Satya Nadella's talking. He did the Azure bit, I think, up top. In fact, I think it's like 12 seconds into his talk. Like, it's very quick. Like, hey, Azure, something. As everyone's like, it was just like everyone lost their minds and forgot, didn't hear the next 10 minutes, right? So there's been a lot of news lately. Copilot also ran in the market compared to ChatGPT especially, but also to Gemini and other AI chatbots. True consumer sides, seems to be true on the business side, et cetera, et cetera. And Satya Nadella, who referred to Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, as essentially a new tier of Microsoft 365, which is the way I sort of describe it, because it's like a significant added cost, said that he called it the family of Copilot apps, but has surpassed over 100 million monthly active users across commercial and consumer. Now,
wow.
Consumer users do not pay by and large. Commercial users all do. I think he was mostly talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot based on the way he was talking from then on. He specifically talked about certain features that were part of that, et cetera, et cetera. But, 100 million is not, insignificant. It's not as many. It's not even close to what ChatGPT has, and that's growing faster, et cetera, et cetera. But those are all paid users, right? I mean, by and large, I would say 90-something% are paid on the for the meaningful part of it. So that's not horrible, not bad. GitHub
compared to ChatGPT, which is what, 800 million. Although
I can't remember
is that paid or not.
Fell at. Yeah, right. Most of those are not paid, right? But then again, they do have in the world of like consumer paid AI. I bet they're number one. I mean,
you would hope
actually paying. I would think they are. Yeah. GitHub Copilot has over 20 million users. That's significant because I think it was April when they said it was 15 million. Now, previous December, they made a free tier of that. And I can say from having used it ever since in Visual Studio that that's good enough for a lot of people. So I wonder, what that number is, paid versus non-paid, but I use it almost every single day. And I've never once had it say, hey, you're getting kind of close to the line there, buddy. Like it's just kind of worked. Like it's giving me a ton of code.
The only people I find that pin their token usage are developers.
Yeah, like actual professional developers.
Sure. That are really building things and putting it seriously to work.
Yeah. No, I'm making a ridiculous app that is wasting my time more than anyone else's, really. But anyway, all right. So
but we love it.
And there were also some really good numbers around Xbox and Microsoft gaming, which I'm going to say for the Xbox segment. But the common thread here is these things are all kind of meaningful numbers. They're all AI related, except for Xbox. They're all positive things, obviously, but the theme seems to be like, look, it's working. If we just spend 80 to, I don't know.
Now they're not spending that on
140 billion,
right?
Yeah.
There's two things that I think about when I think about that $80 billion. A, it was cash, not borrowed.
That's true. Yep.
Right. It would have just been stock buybacks.
Yep.
Otherwise, B, it's mostly data centers, which, might be AA workloads. It might not be. It doesn't matter. In the end, they're buying It's not even the compute. I've been doing the numbers on data centers, and it's like 60% of the data center cost is the infrastructure, not the compute. 40% is what you put in. Right. But your concrete, your power, your cooling, the infrastructure around it, there's 60% of the cost. The machines are going to change out every 5 years, whatever you put in them one way or the other. And that's sort of the diminishing cost. Like the argument is that they're building them too quickly right now for utilization, which doesn't seem to be the case because we're having utilization problems. So build it as fast as you can. But even if the demand dies off, a lot of that money's retained. A lot of that value stays in place.
I'm trying to see if I put this in here somewhere, if I can find it. But yeah, so to your point, 3 of the last 4 quarters, they made significantly more in profits than they spent on this. This past quarter, that has only gone up. Like that's actually, that situation is actually better than it was. I don't remember where with this. I can't find it in my article here, but there was a point in there about Microsoft back when they spaced out Windows revenues in the Windows 7 and then 8 time. Well, I guess they stopped during 8, but they would put revenues aside, so to speak, so that they could smooth it out over time, which is a fun accounting trick that sounds illegal, but whatever.
Yeah, questionable.
And Windows would make an exact $20 billion a quarter, or whatever the number was, right? So okay. They are actually doing that with some of the cloud stuff as well right now. And so what they showed was that not only did they make the revenue and profits to pay for this stuff, but they also have this spend that's coming. So this is like customers that are big companies that are going to spend an enormous amount of money on Azure, essentially, for whatever reason, what might be Microsoft 365, whatever it is. And they're actually spacing out the revenues now. So what they didn't say it exactly like this, but the inference was not only have we paid for this stuff essentially with cash, which is basically what you were saying, but we have the commitments to double or triple the amount we'll need to do the same in the coming year. So the point, I think one of the points they were trying to make in this conference call was, look, I know these numbers are big. I know this looks scary. I know you're wondering, what are we doing? And it's like, this is paying for itself. Don't worry about it. And a lot of those.
At the same time, they, earlier this year at least, put a few projects on hold, which makes me wonder if they're not just looking across the gamut of simultaneous projects, saying, these are the most expensive ones. Why don't we pause these and maybe we can negotiate a better deal while we're moving ahead on the most cost-effective ones?
Yep. Yeah, and I don't have these numbers in my brain, but it was Amy Hood was talking about the amount of years that we're spending on this stuff, and like you said, some of it is this, some of it's this, some of it's this, and some of the technology bits are more short-lived than others. But a lot of the server type things that they're putting in are several-year investments. Like they're going to be there for a while.
Sure.
And maybe longer than I would have expected in some ways, but
the infrastructure of a data center, the 60% is 50 years. Right.
Oh,
that's the concrete and the power poles and stuff. That kind of stuff is going to stay. Yeah. Right. The 40% is a 5-year cycle.
Okay.
And of course, there's a bunch of stuff they kept in during the pandemic when compute pressures went way, way up that are well aged out, and they're starting to roll some of that stuff out.
Okay.
So they do, that 5 years is an arbitrary number. It's not like those machines burst into flames after 5 years.
We were talking about this on TWiT on Sunday, weren't we? You were there.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Because people are saying, not just about Microsoft, but in general, that the CapEx spending on AI, in fact, it's now, as
it's
part
moving
of GDP, it's more than consumer spending. Right. So it's massive. Yeah. But the point that we were making on Sunday, and you're, actually filling it out now, Richard, is that that infrastructure sticks around. Maybe the computers.
Well, like it has a half-life.
Well, it does, because the CPUs and the computers and the GPUs have a half-life.
I wonder. So we, in our country, we were big into things like steel, and fossil fuels, and those things are. Well, steel is gone basically from the United States for all intents and purposes, and fossil fuels are obviously on the way out, right? And so you see the impact of those shifts on these communities that, just like the gold boom stuff in California from a couple hundred years ago, where it was huge and then it was gone, and there were ghost towns and, these abandoned places, et cetera. So we're going to build all these data centers, and I'm wondering, these will be the the sets for the post-apocalyptic movies of the future, where
Max.
it's like, every big building is going to be like a former data center or Amazon warehouse, and they're all like that's our whole country.
There's actually a precedent for that. Look at the malls.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what happened to malls.
But the argument with the malls is that they overbuilt, and so that's what these guys are trying to.
But that's the question here, right? So I mean,
But there's another analogy which we talked about on Sunday, which is the railroads, which in the 1880s overbuilt. Most of those companies went bankrupt, but we didn't lose the infrastructure.
No, we just stopped fixing it.
Well, we had, and it transformed America to have a transcontinental railway.
My God, Yep.
You could make the same argument
the
about
fallout of the dot-com boom was the fiber optic cables laid around the planet that also largely went bankrupt and were bought back at 10 cents on the dollar. And a reason your tech support comes from India.
Yes, but it's also the reason that you have fiber and high speed. Look at broadband adoption in the United States, except for the most rural areas, is a transformation. It's killed cable and television.
Who are finding fiber, like their job is
dark fiber.
They find a piece of dark fiber, like it was put in but never used,
and
they try
the new
and find
copper.
the other
Like
end.
you go to like a new build that was never finished, and you strip the copper out, but now you're stripping
They want to find the other end because often they're like they got lays that were hard to get, right?
Yeah.
And then some of them are really valuable. So it's like, hey, we found this set of fiber sticking out of this building. Where do you think it goes? And then they do this sort of detective work on what permits were pulled when, and then eventually knock on another building store. It's like, hey, there's a chance in the back corner you've got a pipe that you don't know about.
Do you mind if
there's the other side of the country?
There are two subjects I'm fascinated by that are kind of little covered but are so important. One is logistics.
Yep.
And how deeply that technology is rooted in everything we do. We're learning it kind of now with tariffs. But the other is infrastructure. And you just take it for granted. You know, I walk down my street and all the wires are underground. So I don't see the telephone poles, the fiber, whatever.
Oh, move to Mexico, you can see every wire in the world.
I know.
They're all above ground here too.
Yeah. But it's hidden infrastructure, but it's vital. And the way it got there is a fascinating story. Anyway, we have to take a break. Speaking of fascinating stories, we will continue with this conversation. You're watching Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell. I didn't even get to plug Richard's website, which is .NET Rocks. And that's where he'll find .NET Rocks and run it. Actually, it's runasradio.com. You'll find .NET Rocks at runasradio.com. They're all there.
They're all there.
And he's there. He's back in Canada, which is great.
Canada.
For a week.
He was on a cruise. He was on a cruise to Alaska. Paul, you remember going to Alaska?
Yeah,
you remember getting COVID on the boat? You remember that?
Several of our friends have come off the boat.
Well, the funny thing, I remember being told I have COVID. I can't say.
I've gotten COVID twice. Both cases, it was on a cruise.
There you go.
Yeah.
And we're planning a riverboat trip in a month. I'm wondering.
It's a smaller boat. You'll be fine.
And there's lots of fresh air.
You'll get different sicknesses far more quickly than you got COVID.
I mean, you might get trichinosis, but that's a different thing.
I've always wanted to travel through the southeast of the United States. And right now I'm reading histories of the Civil War, and it's really fast. I can't wait. The history is going to be really incredible. We start in New Orleans, love New Orleans. Anyway,
it's going to be cool.
It's going to be very exciting if we get to do it. But first, the reason it's an if is because we're doing construction on the house. And Lisa says, if they're not done by September 20th, we're not going. And I said, but we made this reservation in 2021.
Wow.
I really want to go. All right, let's take a break. More to come. More sad tales of luxury trips to come. First, we have to pay for those luxury trips with our fabulous sponsors. No, that's not what pays for my luxury trips. In fact, this thing, we paid for this so long ago, I don't even forgot that I even paid for it. 4 years we had to make that reservation. I do actually want to talk about something really important if you are a business, and that is SaaS security. We talk about it all the time on all of our shows. This episode of Windows Weekly brought to you by 1Password. Over half of IT professionals say securing SaaS apps is their number one challenge. And actually, if you think about it, you know, your employees are using AI. They're using all kinds of SaaS, some of it approved by the company, some of it not, with the growing problems of SaaS sprawl and shadow IT. You can see why this is a growing problem, but there is a solution. Thankfully, Trellica by 1Password, Trelica, can discover and secure access to all your apps, all of them, managed or not. This is such a good solution. Trellica by 1Password inventories. First thing it does, inventories every app in use in your company, every one. Then they know about all the apps. So they have pre-populated app profiles, which will assess the SaaS risks, letting you decide. You manage access, optimize spend, enforce security best practices across every app your employees use, even shadow IT. It also helps you securely onboard and offboard employees. And of course, it helps you meet compliance goals. Trellica by 1Password provides a complete solution for SaaS access governance. And it's just one of the ways that extended access management helps teams strengthen compliance and security. This is the new thing from 1Password, extended access management. You know their password manager, right? We've talked about it for years. Many of you still use or have been using it for all that time. 1Password's award-winning password manager is trusted now by millions of users, over 150,000 businesses from IBM to Slack. But 1Password's gone beyond securing more than just passwords with this new 1Password, extended access management. Now, needless to say, 1Password is secure itself, ISO 27001 certified, regular third-party audits. By the way, the industry's largest bug bounty, 1Password exceeds the standards set by all the various authorities and is a leader in security. You can be confident when you're using 1Password, and I think you probably know that, right? That by reputation. Take the first step to better security for your team by securing credentials and protecting every application, even unmanaged shadow IT. Learn more at 1password.com/Windows Weekly. That's 1password.com/Windows Weekly, all lowercase. All right, no caps in there. 1password.com/Windows Weekly. We thank him so much for supporting Paul and Richard and the show and all of us. Thank you, 1Password. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt this conversation. I'm going to step back and let you two continue on.
Okay. I'm laughing about this Windows 2030 thing just because you realize that means the next version of Windows.
2030?
Really. It's only 5 years away.
You know, it's been a while, though, since we've gotten a Windows Vision video.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited about this in that sense, I guess.
But, can I play it? Is it allowed?
Too.
Yeah, it's 7 minutes long. I wouldn't play the whole thing, but it's David Weston. This guy's in charge of basically.
Oh, so it's more talky.
OS security. Well, no, he talked. There's some interesting stuff in here, actually, I would say.
Okay, so we'll just everybody should go to Thurrott.com and take 7 minutes, and we'll just wait.
Okay, you back? No.
Yeah, here's David. So I won't turn it up. I'll just let you watch. He's talking.
What's his or DeWizzle or whatever he's called?
He looks like DeWizzle. Look at that hair.
He's deleted his LinkedIn account. That's interesting.
Huh?
Yeah, it was probably too professional. Yeah. So I.
Who is he? Is he responsible for Windows in the future?
He's security.
CV
OS
enterprise security.
Okay. Well,
he's actually pretty great if he can get over there.
He's great. Yeah.
So no, he really is.
He doesn't look like a Microsoft corporate vice president. He looks like he's
I think that
cool,
might be part of the point of his success.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned this earlier. You know, the core focus for Microsoft, according to Satya Nadella, is in this order: security, quality, and AI transformation, right? And so the first of what they promise will be some series of videos about their vision for how Windows will evolve in the future. Focuses on security, thus Dave Weston, although he talks about just agentic use cases and how natural language will change the way we interact with computers.
It's gotta be AI all the time in this context, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, even in its kind of nascent, ridiculous state today, Copilot and Windows, you can see how it's kind of going to go in this direction. I mean, a lot of the the first way we interacted with these chatbots was by text, typing. It was like, what are we doing? Sure. We're going back to a command line.
So right back to Stevie Batish, right? Like that's really when we started talking about Windows.
That was such a great talk. We continually refer to it too, which is
all the time.
Yeah.
But his kind of take on this. I'm trying to think of the actor whose name I'm now zoning on. Pauly
Liam
Shore.
Neeson, I have certain
The Pauly Shore
skills.
D-Wizzle type thing. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go in a serious direction. But he has his own kind of take on it. So you can talk like, you're like multimodal interactions. You're like, okay. And it's like less eyes, more talking. It's like, okay, there you go. Less toil work, right? And Microsoft is doing a lot of hand waving around AI because there are a lot of interested parties who are scared about this, right? And in this case, it's users who are like, we're going to lose our jobs because of AI. And it's like, no, it's going to take away the bad work. It's going to...
You're going to lose your job for other reasons, but it won't be AI. Yeah.
You're still a terrible human being, so that's a problem. But no, it's he kind of just steps through the different ways that humans will always be necessary, and of course he does. But I do sort of like because you can go off the deep end with technical talk, and it's people are like, what are you talking about? But the getting rid of toil, right? It's like, yeah, okay. A lot of what he's talking about is obviously security related. So it's Windows resiliency initiative, right, and how it ties into Microsoft's broader stuff. He talks a little bit about post-quantum hardening of Windows, or making Windows quantum safe, which is interesting because quantum computing has not happened yet, but they're already building, quantum or like encryption that can't be broken by quantum, et cetera, et cetera.
They're not building, starting to deploy.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean to make it like it exists. So, and then just like the notion of, the shift to agentic systems, et cetera. And okay, fine. He hits on this thing that's really interesting. He says this about security, but I would apply this to computing in general. He is saying that computers are going to change a lot, and that the way we interact with them will change a lot, but also that customers are looking for ... And the way he described it was appliance level security. And he compares it to with the understanding that, of course, smart appliances have had problems and all that kind of stuff. But he's like, basically you have a washing machine or refrigerator, does this one thing. It just does it. It's not a general purpose device that you can add anything to, and it, sends you notifications and runs apps and stuff, although those absolutely do exist to some degree. But fair enough, because I wrote this really long thing about the iPad partly on the plane ride home yesterday, where when you think about how computers might evolve, in Microsoft's experience, they've taken this big complex thing and they've kind of built down to go to different devices, and hasn't been super successful. In Apple's case, they did do that one time, obviously with OS X, and then they went to the iPhone. But ever since then, it's been these kind of smaller, lighter, cleaner, more modern systems that are, fine-tuned to whatever the form factor or device type is. And, with the iPad, like you get to this point where it does that kind of 80 whatever % that all computers can do. And our audience is that 15% is like, I could never use that because it doesn't have ... But the 85% is a bigger audience. And, when something like you open it and it just turns on and there are no fans ever, and it gets 18 hours of battery life or whatever it is, and now it does all this other stuff too. And if you don't want that, you don't have to have it. But if you do, you can. And, it's like this, it's solved this kind of matrix of problems that, frankly, I think Apple could have done many years ago, but didn't. And, but now have. And this is kind of a problem. For Windows, but that's not tied to this video per se. But it was interesting because I had just written most of it, and when I heard him say that, I was like, because I don't think Microsoft has anything in the works that I would call an appliance-like personal computing experience, right? The best we're going to be able to do, at least unless something's going to come out of the woodwork and surprise me, is something like Windows 11 on ARM, which has inherent advantages because it's ARM and because they've gotten rid of a lot of cruft, which, the rest of Windows hasn't. And it's not x86, frankly. That's a big part of it.
But all of that software problem
Windows
is becoming less important because we don't really need software anymore in the agentic world.
Well, yes. So, but that is also a problem for Windows, because if that's the case, you don't really need Windows.
Yeah.
Right. Most of our time is spent with these more personal devices anyway. So
we're in the browser.
Yep. and which runs on anything. And so I feel like, that we all know the Steve Jobs thing, right? Cars and trucks and all that. I think in computer speak, I would say that computers have become what we used to call workstations, and these other devices are like computers,
It's funny because for a long time you needed the truck if you want to do coding.
Yep.
You might not even need that anymore.
If you do still need it, it's an artificial limitation because there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do this on a device, right? But obviously, well, maybe not obviously. I mean, you can run Visual Studio Code on a Chromebook if you install that Linux subsystem, whatever it's called. You can't. There is a Swift Playgrounds thing on the iPad, which is not the full, the full Xcode, obviously, but you can actually use it to make apps. I mean, to some degree, it's not the same. It's not Xcode. I get it. It's not cross-platform and all that, but it could happen.
Some say not being Xcode is a virtue.
Yes. Well, but that's the thing. That's the thing. So our audience and our group, our people, us, with the obvious pushback on this is, well, it doesn't do, like I said, it doesn't have this. Like I need this. I need this one ancient printer, this one weird esoteric device, or my job is very specific and I do this, you're a coder or whatever. Like there's always the thing. And it's like, yeah. No, I know. But no one's doing that. All of the major productivity apps are on this thing now. Like all video editors are there. It's all the social media stuff, all the things I use, Notion, IA Writer, Word, Affinity Photo, Photoshop, what's it called? DaVinci Resolve is on there.
Really?
It's nuts. Anyway, so things are changing. So sorry, David. It's but it's probably.
I mean, I'll give you the corollary to that, which is using the Playwright MCP to do testing on a website rather than write the tests themselves. I'm writing prompts to generate the tests, which means when the new version of the website came out, I just reused the prompts to regenerate the tests. I didn't have to go edit all the tests.
Yeah, I think the first. The first disconnect maybe for me, and this is like a developer thing that maybe that audience would kind of understand, was when the focus shifted to web development is why Visual Studio Code became a thing, right? It was answering this problem because you didn't have to have this big, huge Visual Studio thing to do that. In fact, these people were doing something, developers, web developers, by and large, are working in what I would think of, or maybe other developers might think of as an almost unstructured way, where it's like a folder is the project and you're working in an editor and you're deploying to a website maybe, and it's not this build, compile, link, kind of heavy process. It's something that can happen in a more efficient manner. And in the beginning, to people like me, at least, it looks like it looks like a toy. It looks silly. And then one day you wake up and you realize 85% of all developers are doing this. And what you're doing is the minority.
The old school way.
Yeah.
Now the IDE has fallen out of favor with the younger generation. I mean, arguably Visual Studio Code was, we want to build an open source editor. And one of the reasons was there is a generation of developers that have never used an IDE because they were expensive.
Yeah. No, right. There's a thing that Apple's been doing for a long time that is not a part of my daily life, that I think now that the iPad is more of a mainstream computer, maybe will become more of a thing for more people, right? Which is the maybe consumer version of what you just said. Like there's this thing that's happening that we weren't really aware of, right? And that thing on the Apple side is this iCloud thing where you write apps to work with iCloud and you don't worry about file systems and you don't do file management. And, I experienced that in small ways, like by writing an article in IA Writer on an iPad or a Mac, and there's no save or save as. It's just saved in iCloud, and you don't.
Those 3.5-inch floppy icons don't exist anymore.
Yep, they're not there. They've saved a lot. They made the system a lot simpler by not having a floppy disk icon. But
I work in Jupyter notebooks. I just don't save anything.
Yeah, like Notion
is always there.
Right. To be fair to Microsoft, this was one note from V1 was like this, and it was like, what do you mean there are no document files? Like it takes a while to get around that when you're used to the old way.
Yeah.
But once you use it for a little while, you realize, oh, like, you mean this is just gonna work? Like that's, I guess that's one way to do it. I've been using Microsoft products. I didn't know that was an option.
No, my Control S reflex is strong.
Oh my God. The smartest thing it can do is just register it and just keep going, just let you do it. Make
just
you
a little
feel good
icon
about
pops up the side that says "Okay,
like,
Boomer," and it keeps
nicely.
moving.
Yeah, yes, yes, exactly. Please, flip over the floppy so we can finish saving on the other side.
That's it. Yeah, because I know you pulled off that notch, so you could use both sides of the disc.
Oh man, people are wondering what the hell you're talking about, but I've been there. I know.
Yep. We used to have to spin a tape forward to the right point. You'd write it on the outside so you knew where the program started. Those are the days. Yeah. You're like, oh, you just missed it. Oh, come on, go back. It was a good time. Okay. So, all right. So future Windows, blah, blah, blah. I guess we'll see what happens anyway. Reclaim our lives, et cetera, et cetera. Before we get to the insider stuff, which honestly isn't too big this week.
I'm not unhappy that this is CVP talking about Windows, because nobody senior's talked about Windows for a long time.
That's a good point. No, I was saying something about David Weston. He was the guy who he talked about the Windows use of Rust for the first time, for example, in the kernel. And he's been, part of this future, what's it called? The Secure Future Initiative that Microsoft's doing. He's been big during every one of the Windows Resiliency Initiative or whatever that's called, milestones. He came up recently when they announced administrator mode, right, for Windows 11, which is now rolling out in the Insider program. Some of the new system restore capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. So he's been a presence, he's been out there. But yeah, like Richard said, you don't hear Satya Nadella talking about Windows all that much,
Well, I would defy you to even find someone with a title CVP of Windows anymore. Like, who is it?
Right.
It's
not that
I'm not a big fan of Dave Weston, because I am, but the guy's in security.
Yep. Yeah. No, he's not part of Windows product development for sure. Yep. There is. Yeah. So that part of the world is technically, well, it's weird because it's split between Microsoft 365 and, more personal computing. But Rajesh Jha is the kind of overlord of that part of the world. And then Pavan is Windows, probably in more personal computing side. So that's like engineering and user experience, that kind of stuff. And then the Insider program, et cetera. I'm not sure what his title is. He might be a corporate vice president. There seems like there's probably thousands of them now. I don't know.
There's hundreds, but generally speaking, the definition of a CVP is they own a revenue stream.
Oh,
right.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's a pretty important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the threshold. The moment that you own income for the company, they make you a CVP.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's interesting. I guess I'm a CVP for TWiT.
That's it.
But you guys are CVPs for Windows Weekly.
That's true.
You own this revenue stream.
Nice. Oh, right.
But Lisa owns us all, so that's really
that would make her the EVP.
She's the she's the CEO.
Pavan Davaloria is a corporate vice president, so I guess that's the guy.
Is this all defined at somewhere, or is this a standard in all corporations, or is this a Microsoft thing, right?
This is the way I've understand Microsoft for a long time.
Do they publish anything like
they used to, but not anymore?
Yeah,
because it just becomes.
It's not like the military where you get your.
Well, the thing now is it's been used as an attack vector, right? Business compromise,
of course,
based on understanding hierarchies.
That happened to even little old us. So, because if you know who's direct reports. And you can send them a message from the CVP saying, I own this revenue stream. Please send it to
I've been thinking,
in Russia.
It's been a couple of months now, but I think Kevin might actually be a Chinese spy. I'm just saying.
Oh, he's Korean. No.
Yeah. Okay.
He's from North Korea.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
His
English is
CVP
excellent.
Wants you to buy a bunch
of
Amazon cards.
Yeah. Sometimes he slips up. That's all.
We send him Amazon cards every week. Just teasing you, Kay. Just teasing you. if that's your real name.
They're always listening. Be careful. Sensitive. Okay, so Microsoft this week quietly killed Windows 11 SE, which most of you probably don't know is a thing.
Oh my God, that was
second edition.
That was still alive?
Yes, this is the stripped down, what do you call it? Education focused version of Windows 11.
This is the one you could only download from the store, kind of a thing?
No, that's S mode. So
that's S.
This is, but it's part of that
SE
world.
for
It's like,
S
let's
for
take this
education.
complex thing and try to make it simpler. In this case, to compete with Chromebook, right? And so I don't remember what year this was, but when Terry Myerson at the time unveiled the original Surface laptop, it was for some reason, even though it was expensive, targeting the education market. It was announced at an education event. And the thing I most remember from that event was not the laptop, but the fact that their, meaning Microsoft's, meaning the Windows teams at the time, solution for we need something that's as simple as all these remote capabilities that Chromebook offers education customers, was to put software on a Windows, like a USB key, and walk around to each computer and plug it in. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. So since then, they've tried several different things. Windows 11 SE was one of them. And I just mentioned this thing is coincidental, but he talked about this what do you call it? Appliance-like capability, right? And I mentioned the iPad, et cetera, et cetera. So, I would say the Chrome OS and the iPad are kind of examples of these more modern computing platforms that are simpler. And yes, they don't do as much, although, the gap is closing, and the stuff that they don't do, maybe it's...
Is it just me, or is it every time
most.
they put a letter after the number of the Windows, that's a doomed version?
I mean, this is also part of the wider story. It's like, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So when you're Microsoft, everything is Windows, and then you repeat this success story over and over again, and it works great until one day it stops working. But you don't notice until 7 years later when the whole world has changed, and you're still calling things Windows something, and no one cares anymore, and we've moved on. But I don't know. Anyway, they're not doing it anymore. So
No, again,
I don't know what we're going to do going forward, but that one's over. So there's that.
Windows for ARM cuts away a lot of the cruft that the X's and the S's have been trying to do for years.
That's right. And I think that's as good as we're going to get it, and it's a good place to be. It's still Windows. I mean, that workstation thing I was talking about, it's still, it's a full PC operating system, whatever. But yeah, it does get rid of the cruft, and whether it's the architecture and or that, right? Those things probably go hand in hand. But these systems are a lot more reliable. And I don't know why I didn't put this in the notes, but I also wrote a big thing about that this week. I had gone to Mexico with two nearly identical laptops, one running an AMD chip and running Intel, and my wife, who has not once, but maybe a million times wondered if I don't have Tourette's, noticed me freaking out about this Intel-based computer because it just stopped working all the time. Like, it was crazy bad. And I just looked, I didn't do a thorough thing over like every possible metric, but when you look at basic reliability, things like instant on and whether it actually comes on instantly and whether the webcam comes on and actually works, and what happens when you open more than 3 tabs, and what happens when you're on battery power versus plugged into power, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's a clear hierarchy right now. And this will play out. You'll see, we'll talk about the earnings a little bit, it plays out there, but it's, we have this actually really reliable platform that only a few people are using. And then if you do look at the x86 world, there's a nightmare of problems, but the AMD stuff it's not even close. Like, it's so far ahead of Intel. I question the need for Intel. I mean, at this point, I don't even understand what the point of this company is.
They're struggling. Like I said, I think it's going to be parted out. The fabs will go make non-CPU chips that are needed, and they'll become ARM-like. They'll have a design that they license to manufacturers.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, there's bad news there too, right? Like the 18A, and then the coming 14A stuff, which is the dream. These Intel nodes, I don't know, they don't seem to be able to make this stuff happen either. So I don't know what to say about this. It's kind of scary.
I just wonder what would happen if that design team iterated with a TSMC.
Yep.
And actually,
just said, look, we're just going to do this. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And you work with the engineers that know how to make that the EUVLE system work.
I can't say. I mean, no, I don't know. Right. But yeah, the question you're asking really is the holdup here. The desire to do as much in-house manufacturing as possible, which back in the day was all of it. Is that the problem? Because, Lunar Lake has reliability issues for sure. And
sure.
It helped almost bankrupt the company last year. But yeah, otherwise, like without that push, what would they still be doing? They'd still be putting out these inefficient desktop processors disguised as mobile processors with MPUs that didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And,
but they're excellent space heaters.
Yeah. They're okay graphics wise, honestly. They're good. I would say even they're good. But in my experience, the AMD stuff is much better. I
built one of each.
Yeah.
They're both running fine.
Well, you did desktop. So I don't have any. So the desktop stuff, I don't really know where that's at. And are you doing anything with dedicated graphics?
No.
Okay.
No, I put
because that would shift things too.
RTXs in both.
Yeah. So I bet, assuming it's tracks, I'm sure the AMD graphic stuff is much better. That's my guess, but I don't know. I don't know.
I put NVIDIA in both.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you did NVIDIA graphics.
Yeah. 5080 on the dev machine and 5060 on the streamer.
Okay. Well, then it doesn't matter.
I will learn nothing and that'll be the same.
Yeah. There you go. Well, you're a man. Okay. Yeah. So, not too much happening in the insider space. We had a pair of dev and beta builds. So 25 and 24H2, same features in both, etc. There's a single change to File Explorer that only impacts people who sign in with a work or school account, which is of no significance, and some minor changes to where things are in settings, which we've already talked about. They're kind of putting all the relevant search stuff into privacy now. Big deal. Mm-hmm. So not too exciting. Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, if you look at stuff that's actually happening in the Windows world this week, it's almost nothing. We got rid of a Windows no one was using, and we're talking about the future in vague ways. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Great time.
Yeah. Microsoft had their earnings last Wednesday. Since then, we've had Apple, Amazon, Qualcomm, and now today AMD. So obviously, I'll do those in reverse order. Yeah. But the AMD one is actually the most interesting to me because blockbuster quarter, of course, major double-digit gains in profits and revenues. But it's actually the client and gaming segment that's the biggest company there again.
Not server. Because I would have bet server.
Not server data center because they've been having problems with U.S. export restrictions to China. Oh. And so the growth and the revenues of client and gaming together is bigger than data center for them, right?
Now, is this trying to get ahead of the tariffs or is this, I can't buy Intel, so I better buy AMD?
Well, if you were buying a PC, you'd have no trouble getting Intel. What's interesting is that the mix of AMD based PCs has grown dramatically. Obviously, there were no Snapdragon ones before last year, but that also is a chunk, but a small chunk. But the AMD stuff has actually grown. So I just reviewed that HP in this case sells 14 and 16-inch OmniBook X Flip laptops in both AMD and Intel versions. Right, you're starting to see more of that kind of thing, and so that part of the business, just PC processors. Revenues were up 67% year over year. That's what happens when Intel doesn't pay off all the PC makers anymore, frankly. It's also what happens when you actually make the dramatically better product, which is the case in this part of the world. So gaming revenue, relatively small, 1.1 billion. These are dedicated graphics cards, but also what they call, what was the term? Semi-custom revenue, meaning revenue from game consoles, right? We know that AMD is the chipset under the PlayStation and the Xbox currently, but also will be for the next generations as well. So that's like a good little business for them as well. And then, I mean, data center revenues are up 14%, but they probably would have been up, 50, whatever, 60%. It would have been bigger, but for the export restrictions. So that's cool. I like to see them doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Qualcomm reported their earnings. That this is kind of a non-event in a way. It's weird. Like 10.4 billion in revenues. It's like a gain of 10%. It's fine. Handsets is their big business. They don't just make processors, but they make modem chips and other kinds of chips, right? 6.3 of that 10 point whatever billion. So roughly, 60 something percent. They're going to start splitting out their revenues to account for Apple. So as Apple cuts them out of the picture, you'll be able to see how that shifts things. It's kind of an interesting.
It's a smart thing to do, though, because it shows the company overall isn't declining. You just have one contract going away.
Yeah. So we know that's going to go down. So it's kind of, that's kind of interesting. And then we have Apple and Amazon, and these companies are, unbelievable. So it's kind of hard to say what's going on here exactly. But iPhone is something like it's under 50% of Apple's direct revenues. It's good. Services is humongous. That's mostly App Store. There are questions around that. I listened to the post-earnings call with Apple for not the first time in my life, but it's been a long time. And it was just one of those timing things. Like I'd written the article, and as I'm writing it, I can see on their news site that the live stream's happening like in a few minutes. So I was like, I could actually listen to this. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating comparing this to Microsoft's conference calls, because I've listened to a ton of those. And they're different. They're the same and they're different, right? So they're the same in that the CEO gets up and reads off of a script. You can tell in Tim Cook's case, he's like reading off a piece of paper, really stiff, not like he is when you see him at public events. The CFO was there with him, just as Amy Hood is with Satya Nadella in the Microsoft calls, and then it's a Q&A. And so that part's the same, but man, you would not expect this, because you would think Apple would just cut these guys right off if they got inappropriate in any way. But the analysts on the Apple call were super aggressive, asking them very cutting questions, which were things that they did not discuss at all in their earnings report. Whereas the Microsoft one, it was all fawning and like, oh my God, thank you so much for this Azure. You're doing so much better than we thought. Like, that's incredible. Like, congratulations on the quarter. Like, it was great. Like, there were a lot of sucking up and like just fell for that whole divert with all the numbers, right? But in Apple's case, they would say, yeah, but what about like you guys are still behind an A, like what's going on? And they answer like, we don't really feel like we're behind. Like the next guy's like, yeah, but you guys are behind an A. Like, what do you think about that? Like they were really kind of aggressive, and I thought that was kind of fascinating. But that part was interesting to me. And then Amazon, the most boring and arguably non-tech company on earth. The most revenues is always the fewest, the smallest profit / net income, as always, because a big chunk of Amazon's business is this logistics / physical goods thing, which is really, really high margin and uncertain, and you have to account for a lot of returns and blah blah blah, whatever it is. So like whatever, but the part of the company that we kind of care about, I guess there's a couple, but the big one is Amazon Web Services, AWS, was 31 billion in revenue ish. 18% of Amazon revenues overall, but by far its most profitable business. And I think I have the number
because
here.
Warehousing is an incredibly low margin business.
Yeah,
retail in general.
Yep. Yeah. Right. It's like this enormous thing to make this little amount of money, at the end, right? But okay, it's Amazon, right? Also, they talked about CapEx spending, like all these companies. That was the other thing those guys asked about Apple. They kept saying like, we know you guys don't like to break out these numbers, but if you had to give it a number, what would you say you're spending on CapEx right now? That kind of thing. Apple actually does divulge CapEx numbers, by the way, but like
they're also not building a bunch of AI data centers.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're building some. I mean, they talk about that, but yeah, not to the way that Apple, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are. Mm-hmm. So Amazon, sorry, is going to spend $100 billion this year on AI infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So you can compare that to what Microsoft did last year, which was about 85, and what they are spending this quarter, which is 30, and we'll see where that goes.
If they maintain that trend, that means 120 for the next fiscal.
Yep. So yeah, these companies are all competing in AI, but they're also trying to, in a way, competing to see who can outspend each other on AI infrastructure, I guess.
It's a crazy way to make headlines.
Yep.
You got to spend if you want to make.
We don't feel like you're serious about AI. Do you think you want to spend a little more money?
Oh, jeez.
I don't know.
Actually, it's interesting because Apple traditionally just does not spend a lot. Their CapEx is way below. It's half what Google spends.
I'll never remember these numbers, but Apple's R&D at the time when they were doing things like the iPod, the iPhone, whatever, it was like nothing.
Yeah.
Microsoft is spending tens of billions of dollars on R&D, and they're like, yeah, we got like Fred out back in a garage, and he's got like.
It doesn't seem to hurt Apple. I mean, they come.
No, I know it seems to go. The Apple is terrible because no one can ever copy them and be successful doing that. You know what I mean?
They are definitely their own thing.
There's no guy who's like, I'm going to think like Steve Jobs and I'm going to do, it's like, no, you're not.
There's lots of people who think they can.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't duplicate the success. It's bizarre. Like it's just
amazing. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Let's take a break. Come back. We have AI development stuff to talk about. We've got Xbox. We got whiskey. We got it all. You're watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. So glad you're here today. Our show brought to you by US Cloud, the #1 Microsoft unified support replacement. You've heard me talk about US Cloud now for a few months. It's starting to sink in. They are the global leader in third-party Microsoft support for enterprises. Since we started with them, they are now supporting 50 of the Fortune 500 companies. And there's a good reason, because switching to US Cloud saves them and can save your business 30 to 50% over Microsoft Unified and Premier support. Half as expensive, but twice as fast. That's right. Twice as fast average time to resolution versus Microsoft. So you're not just cutting costs, you're cutting hair pulling, which is really good. When your network's down, your hair's on fire, you've got a ransomware virus spreading or whatever it is, speed is of the essence. But now US Cloud's really happy to tell you about something new that they're doing, which can save you money on Azure. It's their Azure cost optimization services. This is probably something Microsoft would not be helping you with if they could avoid it. Because frankly, let's be honest, Azure usage just happens, right? Azure just happens. If you haven't evaluated your Azure usage in a while, you probably have some Azure sprawl, little spend creep. It's not hard. Yeah, we need to spin up a new VM. We want to do this. But maybe you don't need all of that. So the good news is saving on Azure is easier than you think with US Cloud because they offer an 8-week, they call it an Azure engagement. It's powered by VBox. It identifies key opportunities to reduce costs across your entire Azure environment. You're going to get, of course, one of the other things that makes US Cloud so special, expert guidance, access to their senior engineers. These folks have an average of over 16 years with Microsoft products, which means they've forgotten more than I will ever know. At the end of the 8 weeks, your interactive dashboard will identify rebuild and downscale opportunities, unused resources, which means you can reallocate your precious IT dollars towards things you need more. But I've got an even better idea. How about let's keep the savings going, invest those Azure savings in US Cloud's Microsoft support. A few other US Cloud customers have done that and completely eliminated their unified spend. So you keep saving. It's a win all around. Just ask Sam. He's the technical operations manager at Bede Gaming, B-E-D-E. He gave US Cloud 5 stars. He said, that's 5 out of 5. We found some things that have been running for 3 years, which no one was checking. These VMs were, I don't know, 10 grand a month, not a massive chunk in the grand scheme of how much we spent on Azure. Well, once you get to $40,000 or $50,000 a month, it really starts to add up. Yeah, I bet. It's simple. Stop overpaying for Azure, identify and eliminate Azure creep, and boost your performance, all in 8 weeks with US Cloud. Visit uscloud.com right now. Book a call today. Find out how much your team can save. That's uscloud.com. Book a call today. Get faster Microsoft support for less, a lot less. uscloud.com. We love these guys, and we thank them so much for supporting Windows Weekly and all you Windows users out there. This is going to be, I know we're going to be talking about this on the next show on Intelligent Machines. Mm-hmm. This week, stuff is happening in the AI. It's like, I feel like, I don't know, we're on the turn of the hockey stick or something. It's just wild what's going on out there. And we still haven't seen ChatGPT 5, which is supposed to come out soon.
Yeah, that could be as soon as this week. But then today they just announced these, I love these terms, like open weight LLMs.
It's kind of like they're inventing new terms because they don't have.
No, but that's important because traditionally they have not.
They've been
kept those all private. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this exactly. So this is another.
They promised this, and nobody believed they would do it. To be honest, this means you could, I guess, in theory, run it locally, right?
No, that's the point. Yeah, you could run it locally on like your own hardware, like a PC, a Mac, or maybe even a mobile
That's
device.
huge.
Yeah, yeah.
They've never offered that before.
Right. So I need to look at this more closely because I got something from Qualcomm that suggests to me that there's probably an NPU optimized version of this that would work great on their laptops. But the big thing on the Windows side that I've seen so far is the GPU optimized versions of this thing. So
you're going to need a lot of RAM.
Yeah.
And specifically GPU RAM.
Yeah. One of them is 120 B, which is pretty massive. I don't think I could run that on any of my systems.
Well, it requires 16 gigs. So that's that's like saying Windows requires 4 gigs.
Yeah.
So,
but is that 16 gigs in the motherboard or 16 gigs
that's
in
a
the
good
video card?
Right.
Because a 16 gig 5080
that's
or 5090.
That's an expensive card. That's
a $5,000 card.
Yeah.
So it runs on devices with up to 80 gigs of memory.
That's why you want that unified memory, right? Because then you can access it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so I got to spend a little bit of time with this one. This is kind of interesting. I mean, we've had, obviously there were local models, but these are LLMs, like the cloud hosted models, but you can get them in different weights. And if you have the appropriate hardware, run them locally, which is like, interesting. Yeah. So we'll see. That's kind of big news. And then of course, Microsoft is giving this stuff away for free. So you can, because that's what they do. As they do, which is hilarious. Yeah. So for Windows people, there's the Windows, what's it called? Azure Foundry or whatever. Windows Azure Foundry. That doesn't sound right. Just Azure Foundry, Windows Foundry. I guess it's Windows Foundry if it's local.
Or is it AI
Windows
Foundry?
AI Foundry. Okay. Yep. You can get them in Visual Studio Code, right? So Visual Studio Code, I think still it's an extension, but there's an AI toolkit you can get for free, obviously. It's going to just be built in if it isn't already, and it's available through there as well. And then if you could just use that, not even as a developer, you could just use it and interact with it as you would with like ChatGPT. It's literally a little text interface. You send it prompts and it answers, and you can see for yourself. So I'm going to play with this. I'm kind of curious with this one. About this one, I should say. So Apple, which has obviously nailed AI. I mean, I think we can all agree they're leading in this area. Is looking to get rid of their latest partner, OpenAI, by building their own chatbot or AI model that will work on device and not need ChatGPT. Right? They want to have this thing that they own and have themselves, and it will be their thing. And it's for Siri, it's for whatever else is on those devices. And yeah, I mean, if you could just make Siri actually be, Siri is like everything Microsoft makes. It's like the one Apple thing where you're like, what?
So or it comes up when Siri is like the Internet Explorer of Apple. Is that where you are?
Yeah, it's like it's like that old meme where you had the browsers and it was like, this Netscape at the time was doing this, and then Mozilla came around and did this advance, and then Chrome came around and did whatever, and then Internet Explorer was like, yay, internet. It's like it's just over there like we're trying. I don't know. Yeah, it's that. So
I mean, it's the first time we've seen sort of visibility into Apple teams that they're starting to have stories about the dysfunction within the Siri team.
That's right.
Alternative teams being put together. Like that is just not Apple. You never see that.
Yeah, I mentioned, this in terms of Windows, and of course I follow Windows super closely compared to say Apple stuff, but you do this thing that works and it works and it works, and then one day it doesn't work, and you're like, wait, what? And I feel like Apple has run into that a little bit, right? That they divided the company up in a certain way, and it always worked great, and there might be a call for more of a cross company thing, that maybe they're not doing or something or whatever. But like whatever they were doing was clearly not working. And whatever they were doing over the past year to get Siri more intelligent did not work. And I don't know. This is leaked Apple meeting thing where supposedly this is in great shape now, and I'm sure it is. I don't know. Anyway, I, like everyone, look forward to the day when Apple can tell ChatGPT, we don't need you anymore, but whatever. And then Alexa, speaking of things that are terrible. So Alexa Plus, I think is US only still. It's still fairly limited, but it's now going out to more and more people. I can't say that I've ever seen a report where anyone was overly exuberant about it working well. I've seen a lot of the opposite. I'm never going to use it because Amazon, whatever, who cares? But yeah, you can get it for free with an Amazon Prime subscription at least. And then if you don't have that, it's $20 a month. And at that point, you should just get an Amazon Prime subscription, by the way. But yeah, now they're talking about adding advertising to it, right? And so that would be for different tiers. I mean, it's not hard to imagine an ad-supported Alexa Plus tier, I guess.
Right.
Yuck. So there's that. And then just on the dev side, just real quick, I don't want to beat this to death, but I've spent the past year now struggling to make WPF, which Microsoft has sort of brought back from the grave work with like a modern app. It's not really possible or easy anyway. So I've switched over to the Windows App SDK, which is kind of their more modern native app, whatever platform. It's not really a framework, but call it a framework. It uses WinUI as the WinUI 3 is like the UI framework, which is that modern Windows 11 look and feel, which I do like. But that's a nightmare too. It's a nightmare. It's a good. I've always complimented Microsoft when it comes to developers, because even as they move from framework to framework or whatever, even when they moved off of .NET and went to WinRT and the Windows runtime and those modern apps,
that was
with
still .NET.
Well, but okay, but it certainly is now. I mean, and now, they went from that to UWP and then to, Windows App SDK.
Yeah, they've kind of left the UWP orphaned. And if you want to talk about Microsoft orphaning people, ask any Silverlight person. does happen, but it is
it does. But my point was your skills move forward. It's still all C#. It's still all .NET or .NET like. It's still familiar, whatever. The XAML is
Four flavors
similar.
is XAML.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? I used to say this, a million years ago, I would say this about C and Pascal, where it's you've got these two languages that are really similar, but it's the differences that are really going to kill you. And I found that with this stuff, it is bizarre. I mean, I don't know that there is a single feature in the app that I write that is the same in WPF and in Windows App SDK. The APIs are all completely different. It's crazy. And I want to be super clear. They're never going to fix this. There's no reason.
Well, they've been trying for a long time, right? That this is the political battle that became Maui, right? Is trying to get the WinUI aligned with the WPF, aligned with what was really Xamarin Forms. Trying to have a unified client story.
You probably know more about this than I do. And maybe we should, offline, maybe we should talk about this, how this is structured. But from the outside, it looks like, I know there are teams, I know some of the people, there are teams and there are teams working on things. But when it comes to stuff like WPF, which is not a team at Microsoft, I think it's two guys in Pakistan. It's something very strange. Even the Windows App SDK, when I made this switch over, I had at least one guy who said, look, here's a link or 3 links to these forum things from GitHub where people are freaking out because this thing is never updated and they've missed every schedule imaginable. And you kind of go and look at it and you're like, yeah, actually, this is kind of bad. And I experienced this myself. You might remember a year ago at Build 2024, they announced what was then called the Windows Copilot Runtime. And this was the developers going to be able to access the same APIs Microsoft was using in Windows to do local AI stuff in their apps. And I was like, great, this is how I will do AI stuff in my app. They didn't ship the first external preview for developers until the following January. And it was in a version of an experimental version of the Windows App SDK that you could not ship to customers. Like you couldn't use it in real apps. And as of today, they've changed the name of that. That's what the AI Foundry became. And some of the APIs actually are available, but it's still like the whole group of it is still not available in like a shipping version of.
Well, and I think the whole thing's been undermined by the AI wave. Like there was,
So
all of these visions were pre ChatGPT and Satch's famous letter.
Yeah.
Which is only 2023, man. Like it's just not been that long.
There is 2 years of complaining, and finally, some young woman on this team has finally wrote a post and said, "We hear you. You're right. We're going to fix it." And their long-term plan is actually to open source the Windows App SDK, which is what they did previously, obviously with .NET, but also with frameworks like Windows Forms and WPF. So that's either good or bad, depending on how you look at it. I don't really feel like there's a focused team working day to day to get stuff out to make this thing better on a whatever basis, quarterly, monthly, whatever. Like it's, not great.
There are teams. But
yes.
There's always,
yes, there are.
There's another part of this, which is what are the product makers using?
Yeah.
The question you always have to ask yourself as a dev, when you're looking through the various Microsoft stack, is which teams are using this? How many Maui apps are there inside of Microsoft?
Jeez, I know. Probably not many.
I don't think there's any. Is really the point.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen this over the years.
The same thing happened to WPF. WPF went for years until Visual Studio implemented it.
And even then it was like part of it. And, and this is the thing. I mean, there are little insights into this every once in a while. Like when Microsoft brought forward the Windows 10 File Explorer into Windows 11 and then started updating it, they ran into some problems and they were like, all right, we're going to have to rewrite parts of this. The first way they did it was with something called XAML Islands, which was a way to get this kind of more modern code into a classic desktop app. And
it was clever.
They essentially rewrote it to make it work for their app. And they were like, look, this is not a sustainable solution. And, that was one of the inputs that went into what became the Windows App SDK, right? The Project Reunion thing. But now they've used that, right, to update parts of the UI. Same thing. They did not rewrite this app from scratch.
No.
Looking at the Windows App SDK, I can see why. That would have been, this is a nightmare.
This is a huge amount of work. And there's not a lot of people, right? And if it doesn't have AI in its title, it can be laid off at any time.
Some of this is bizarre. Like, let me give you this one, like, real simple example that anyone would sort of understand. Windows 11 supports like these color, like themes, like dark mode, light mode system, right? So in WPF or in the Windows SDK, you can test for which the setting the user is using. It adapts on the fly. So if the user changes from light to dark, your app changes with it, right? So we've added this capability to WPF. And so you basically, you have a UI in your app, like I do anyway, where you can switch the style, whatever it's called, the theme. Works great. And there are 3 choices, right? I mean, literally as a developer, you can say, I want this thing to be light, I want it to be dark, or I want to follow the system. Those are your choices.
Yep.
And in the Windows App SDK, which is newer and more modern, there are 2 choices. I want it to be light, or I want it to be dark, or I'll just ignore it. And if I ignore it, that means system. No. The answer is no. That is not how you do that. That's stupid. Like as a developer, you're going to have a switch statement or an if then or whatever you want to call it, where you test for what it is, and then you map it to what you have as in an API. And what you have in an API, if it's system, which is probably 90-something% of all Windows computers in the world, you ignore it. No, just no. That's one feature. In my stupid simple app, maybe has 200 features. That's one, and every single freaking one of these things has to be rewritten. That's how stupid this thing is. Okay, let's move on. I'm sorry. I know this isn't my therapy hour, but
calm down.
God damn it.
This is Windows Weekly, in case you were wondering, not Paul's therapy hour. Well,
it amounts to the same thing.
Kind of both. Yeah.
It's a little bit of both.
Richard and I just sit here on either side of him to keep him from, breaking out of the box.
Let him talk. Get it out.
Tell me how this merely makes you feel.
You're okay.
You know what always cheers Paul up? The Xbox segment. That's what's coming up next. Thank you for being here. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell. I'm Leo Laporte. You're watching Windows Weekly. We do this show every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Well, when my cat's not lost. We were a little late today because I was looking for the kitty.
Are there any updates on the cat, by the way?
No. In fact, as soon as you begin the Xbox segment, I'm running downstairs to see if I can shake the treats again. I'm watching the cameras and I don't see her. But you know what? What happens after a while is she sits outside the door saying, okay, you can let me in now.
Yeah.
We'll see. I hope
What does
that's
that pay you people for, honestly?
Yeah, really. Dogs have masters, cats have servants.
Well, they both have the same thing. They bring us food. They must be gods. No, they bring us food. I must be God.
That's a very important distinction.
No, with the cat's behavior is always like, you have no idea how important I am to your existence. And the cat's like, you're right.
So while I go shake the treats for the kitty, let's shake the treats for Paul. Time for the Xbox segment.
Yeah. So I mentioned up top when we talked about Microsoft earnings, there were also some explicit numbers for Xbox and Microsoft gaming.
100 million is a big number.
It is a big number. Yeah. And this is another area where we could do some fun math, maybe. So Microsoft Gaming, which is a kind of an Uber game publishing company, really, right? With everything Activision Blizzard have, everything ZeniMax / Bethesda had, including id Software, right? And everything Microsoft already had through, its own in-house stuff and the stuff it acquired. So, the big franchises like Flight Simulator, Halo, Gears of War. I'm forgetting some for some reason, but there's a bunch of these things anyway. So 500 million monthly active users. This is interesting to me because A, they've never used this number once ever.
No.
B,
they may never use it again. Awesome.
Yes. Although now I'll be looking for growth, so we have something to work from. But Activision Blizzard used to talk about this, right? And so if you go back and look, the last year they were around and would report their earnings normally like a standalone company might.
A couple of years ago.
Yep. They, depending on the quarter, it was somewhere between, I want to say 365 to 385 million monthly active users, right?
Okay.
Now, you could say, okay, so let's say nothing changed. That's probably not fair.
And the bulk of those are going to be World of Warcraft, I imagine.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
So Microsoft has contributed some, or Microsoft's other gaming studios, maybe is the right way to say that, have contributed the remaining 100, let's call it 125, 150 million, whatever that number is. Okay. And Microsoft gaming is also a cross-platform publisher, right? And so one of the big deals, and this is controversial, I know, but they're now publishing more and more games on PlayStation. They, for the past 6 months, have had the top, whatever it is, 3 to 5 games on the PlayStation, which is astonishing. To the point where Sony is now like, yeah, I think we're going to put stuff on Xbox too. Why not? It's like, what's happening? Like these two companies that were each other's throats during all the antitrust stuff around Activision Blizzard are like, best buddies now. Hilarious. Right. That's nice. By the way, Google and Microsoft, that's how it can work. I'm just saying, just think about it. So that's interesting. Call of Duty has 50 million monthly active users. I don't remember the exact metric they used, but they were describing maybe by some form of engagement that the latest version of Call of Duty is like the most successful version thus far. In kind of a bid to counter the bad news around layoffs and game shutdowns and studio closings. Almost, I think the way they put it was nearly 40 games actively in development for the Xbox as a platform, meaning across, all those endpoints. And then Xbox Game Pass. I believe this is the first revenue number we've gotten. I think we used to get like member account, like member subscriber counts, but we haven't gotten that in a while. But $5 billion in revenue, almost $5 billion, or somewhere around $5 billion in revenue for the fiscal year, which I think they described as a record. Well, of course, it would be a record at this point. It's still going up. And then over 500 million hours playing games over Game Pass in the fiscal year. Collectively.
All right.
So, yeah. I mean, I think I made this point last week. This must have been when we discussed this, but there are these people in the Xbox kind of community that are still freaking out over the strategy, yada, yada, yada. Yep. But if you pulled the hardware part of this business out, and just left the rest of it sitting there, not only would it be one of the most successful parts of Microsoft from a profitability perspective, but if it's not the biggest gaming company in the world, it's got to be number 2. I mean, it's right there. It's humongous.
Sure.
So
they've bought it.
There you go.
They bought the big players. And and I was presuming World of Warcraft, and I'm being a little facetious. I presume Call of Duty is bigger, Overwatch is bigger.
I don't know that. I mean, none
of those
big.
Games are new.
They're big,
right?
They're tentpoles. Yeah,
yeah, but they are tentpoles.
They're tentpoles. Okay, so there we go. All right, so today in the game bar on Windows 11, if you're playing a video game, you can hit Windows key plus G, or if you're using the controller, that white lit up button in the middle there, and you bring up the game bar, right? And one of the big additions they made to this thing, sometime in the past 6 months, was the Edge gaming assist feature, where it's like a little, mini version of the browser. And the idea there is that so many people are playing a game and get stuck or whatever, they need some help, and they switch contexts, go to a browser. If you're using a Windows PC, that's not a great experience. But whatever, that's what we do. And so now you can just do it like without leaving the game, right? Because the thing comes up as an overlay over the game. It can be there side by side if you want it that way. It can, always be on screen, et cetera, et cetera. But sometime in the past 3 months or so, Microsoft talked about this thing coming down the road, which was like Copilot, like gaming Copilot, like Copilot for gaming, which I know a lot of groans, a lot of people don't like this kind of idea.
Things.
Yeah, but same theory. You're going to integrate it into this game bar, right? Which is an integral part of Windows 11. It comes up on top of the game you're playing. I said it's an overlay, and now they're starting to test that.
What's it going to do? It's going to say you should turn left here.
Yeah, it's going to say that. That's no. I'm not joking. I'm sorry. Like literally, it is going to say that. Like the point of it is what AI does for you when you're in Word or Visual Studio or whatever.
I need another your mama joke.
Look,
it could teach you how to taunt. That would be good. Yeah.
By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if we go there. Like if you think like back in the day, like when multiplayer gaming was expensive or harder, whatever you had, maybe sometimes you had to have special hardware, whatever it was. I used to shoehorn like a phone in my shoulder, and my friend and I would be, because we were playing with both hands on like the keyboard,
right?
But over probably a cable modem by that point in Phoenix, playing like Quake World together or whatever, right? And we could talk to each other, and we weren't doing it in the game like you would now because that was coming or whatever. But like at the time, we were on the phone, and like we're doing that thing. And
it looks like you're trying to trash talk him. Can I help?
Well, I hope it's not like that Clippy like, but we talked about, David West had mentioned this notion that we're going to have these more natural user interfaces, meaning you're going to speak to it and it's going to speak to you. And you could imagine in the same way you might call out today for one of these assistants, you might in the heat of the game say, hey, how do I get by this thing or whatever it is?
Useful.
Yeah. And so this is the natural evolution.
Or it could do my mapping. Like make a map of this as I move around.
Yeah, like what's or what's the most lucrative side quest I can do right now so I can move, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
what would Elon do right now?
Get someone else to play for you.
Oh yeah, that's
no, I wouldn't go there, but anyway, look, this is a feature that knee jerk this audience is going to kind of make fun of, but honestly, I think this makes as much sense as anything else. Some people will want this thing to talk to them, to coach them to get through something, right? Some people will want that. Some people will want to just ask it a question or say, I need help right now. Like, just give me the answer right now. And what you don't want in that instance is, okay, it seems like what you're asking me to do is tell you how to get by the troll. You're like, and they get killed by the thing. Like, no, just give me the answer, so I can move on.
Run.
Hopefully that will be the experience. You're exactly right.
You're gonna die.
Must run faster. And you'll have, like, mine will be Jeff Goldblum, whatever. You can do however you want to do it.
Life finds a way.
Yeah. So I'm not, look, this is not something, yes, AI will find a way. And this, I don't know. We'll see. This is something I'm kind of curious about, but I don't, in the same way that I don't often need to go to I've done it obviously over time, but like recently the types of games I play now Not a lot of questions. So I don't really, it's fine. It's fine the way it is. But I am curious about it. I think it's kind of an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the wrong link for this story. Of course I do, because what else is going on in my life? That's okay. So we have some Game Pass stuff happening as we do every month. And the big news for this next batch of games coming to Game Pass is Assassin's Creed Mirage is one of those titles. And let me look to see.
Is that where you go to a Vegas hotel and try to find your way out of the casino? Is that?
No, but that would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
So it's coming tomorrow, August 7th. So Thursday this week, Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass across cloud, console, and PC. And then other things, Aliens, Firestorm Elite, at least I've heard of, Orcs Must Die, Death Trap, Mech Warrior
Must
5.
Die. I couldn't agree more.
Lonely Mountain Snow Riders, which sadly is not something to do with The Hobbit, but is instead...
It looks like you're skiing.
Right. It looks like, like something else. Yeah. Okay.
Orcs Must Die.
Orcs
Death
Must Die.
Trap.
Yeah.
Warrior.
It's so funny. These are like, I remember when I was, first started gaming with my Atari, you'd go to a store that was this kind of dusty, flea-bitten old store that it wasn't well organized. The shelves, things were falling off the shelves, and it
could be selling porn, could be selling video games. Like what?
It was all video games, and they all had lurid covers, much like these.
Yes,
and they were all by small kind of indie teams, and
they were
most
put
of
in
them were
plastic
terrible.
Bags. I bought some in bags. Like
they were
like
still in Ziplocs. A lot of them, yeah.
Yep.
Where the instructions were mimeographed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I made up game packs for games for the TRS-80 on cassette tape with cards in Ziploc bags.
I had a game
for
$12.95. I had a game on the Commodore 64 that was on tape. And at one point I think I did it by mistake, but it was like whatever, the Commodore key plus C or something, or Commodore break or whatever. And I got into the source code and I was like,
It's written in BASIC.
Interesting. It's time for me to learn this language. I'm going to give myself a bag of infinite holding.
People of a certain generation probably did get into computing through gaming. Right?
Oh, yeah. Into
we were
programming.
typing games
into
in from the
programming.
magazine.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You had to I learned to debug before I learned to code.
Exactly. Well, I also learned how to read hex because I was removing copy protection from the disk.
They would to make it shorter. They would put them in hex, and you'd have to. I used to have my sister read it to me in Run magazine, and I type it in
9.
Yeah, because there was a time I didn't have a way to save it.
You didn't have a drive. No,
I had to go back and type it the next day.
Yeah.
So if you thought things loaded slow now, let me tell you something.
It feels like a flashback to that era where these were just kind of like, whoever heard of these? Yeah, I mean, a few, obviously Assassin's Creed, but
Mech Warrior.
Yeah,
Orcs Must Die, Death Trap. I mean,
Orcs Must Die is that one I've heard of because there was several of those at least.
Snow Riders. I mean,
yeah.
Who's developing these? Are these like...
It's no lawnmower simulator, but...
Is this all some Belgian game company? Or the guys are speaking Flemish and saying, let's do another.
Listen, we're going to look... This is going to be the golden age in a couple of months because in not so far from now, it's all going to be AI-generated games.
And these are human-created.
Making a game and as you play it.
There is a cutoff between... and that's what... our friend John Graham Cumming from Cloudflare was doing, was trying to let's preserve stuff that was created in the days before there was AI slop that we know a human made.
Yep.
Because pretty soon you won't know.
Which is like saying, hey, there's this thing on the cave wall over here. You think we should save this? And it's like, yeah.
We'll just paint another one someday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
anywho.
And then just real quick, Nintendo came out with Switch 2, gangbusters, going great. It's the fastest launch, I think, of any video game console, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how it does over time. But if I remember correctly, I don't know if they held off on the price because of tariffs. They weren't sure and then went with whatever. If they announced this, that we might have to change it, and maybe they didn't for the console, but for some of the peripherals, I think that might be close to what happened.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Okay. So what they're doing in the wake of that is they're going to actually start raising prices on the original Switch models, which should help drive sales of the new ones, I guess, but based on what they call market conditions, which I think is Nintendo speak for tariffs. So, we'll see what the long-term impact of this is, but Switch 2 is doing okay, I guess is what I'm saying. And then, of course,
quietly Nintendo, knocking it out still.
Yeah.
Still playing Mario.
Well, remember when they announced the new Switch, the price was much higher, and everybody thought, oh. No. And I think they built in the tariff. They presumed that the tariffs would be there. They put them on the accessories because maybe they didn't.
This is all, this is another area where, we see this in the Windows community a lot, but like in this space where it's like, oh, I'm not spending $450 on a Nintendo. That's ridiculous. It's like, yeah, no, I mean, who would want like something simple with great battery life that looks great and plays great games? Like, yeah, you're right. No, you're smart. You should do whatever the stupid complex thing you're doing is. Like, I'm sorry, but it's probably going to do pretty good. Like,
I think now I don't know if you can walk into a store and buy it, but I think it's getting close, right? The supplies kind of filling out, which is
my
good.
Son walked into I don't know if I said this, but like he just went out in the world that day and walked into some retailer and they had one, and he's like, "Oh, can I buy this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah,
it was like nice.
Yeah, no, I have a couple of friends who did exactly that. Just walked in, having got not on the lines or anything, and I got one.
Yeah. I'm lazy, so I'd be like, yeah, they're not going to have it. I wouldn't even try. Yeah.
No. But maybe next time I drive by a Target, I'll pop my head in, just see what they got. We're going to take a little break, and then it's tips of the week. The back of the book is here. Yay! A couple of apps, and then a liquor pick. Ooh,
a whiskey lesson. I learned something new.
Okay. The whiskey segment lives on. All of that coming up in just a bit. But I do want to, at this point, remind all of you that this show exists. Yes, we have advertisers. We love our advertisers. But primarily thanks to the support of our club members. 25% of our operating costs comes out of the club. Thank you, club. Without that, we'd have to lay off people. We'd have to cancel shows. With the club membership, we are able to do more. And that makes me really happy because I want to do more. I think what we're doing is great. Certainly fun for us, and I hope you're getting some value out of it. If you are, there's a way to support it. Visit twit.tv/clubtwit. It's $10 a month, $120 a year. We do have a yearly plan, so you don't have to keep getting charged every month. People asked for that. We also have a 2-week free trial. We have a family membership. We have corporate membership. The benefits include access to the Club Twit Discord, which is a lovely place to hang out with smart, interesting people who are not only talking about the shows we're doing right now, but are talking about anything geeks are interested in. All sorts of stuff, including gaming. We have a pretty active Minecraft server. People who are in the club can play there. Apparently, we have Wordle and Bracket City players. We also have special events. In fact, there's some coming up this week. Very excited. Stacy's Book Club is Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. The book is This Is How You Lose the Time War. It is a novella, so you still have time to read it, and I recommended it. Jason Snell agrees. It's a fantastic, fascinating book. I'm glad we picked it. We have a vote among the club members. We have usually 2 or 3 choices from Stacy, and this was the one we picked for August 8th, 1 p.m. Pacific. Right after that, it's our photo segment. Chris Marquardt every month comes by, looks at your pictures, gives you a new assignment. The current assignment is classic, and then gives you a new assignment for the following month. We tape a lot of the shows. Listen to me. We digitally record. We save the bits for a lot of shows in the club, including Home Theater Geeks, iOS Today. Coming up, the Google Pixel 10 announcement is August 20th. That's right before Windows Weekly, guys. We might be a little late. I don't think we will be. But Micah and I will be talking about that. We do those now only in the club, so we don't get taken down off YouTube and other places. So join us in the club for that. Micah's Crafting Corners coming up. Micah's doing Lego. I'm going to do some button sewing.
Wow.
Yeah, I need to. I brought him to my my dry cleaner, and he said, "Can you fix the buttons?" I said, "Yeah," and then he didn't. So I have to put some buttons on these weird shirts that I wear in the show. Anyway, that's kind of some of the stuff that happens in the club. You also,
I built a PC.
Oh, that, by the way, after we do the shows live in the club, they go up on the TWiT Plus feed in the club, and You spent 3.5 hours building that PC, Richard.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for doing that. That was incredible.
Just a patient guy.
Watch Richard take the motherboard out, put it back in.
Put it back in. Take it out again.
How many scarred knuckles did you end up with?
I didn't draw any blood, but I was very close to sacrificing a chicken. Vengeance and irony.
It was exactly why we started the club, is for stuff like that. So thank you for doing that.
I got to find another project because I'm not going to build another PC for a while. I was thinking about putting LEDs on this cube wall behind me.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Wire that up on screen.
Anytime you want to put a project on the in the club, please do. I'm going to start doing a little after hours thing after TWiT on Sunday nights because people have been asking. I don't have any shows where it's just me talking, so we're going to do that, kind of like the old radio show. Anyway, there's lots of stuff going on. I think it's worth $10. I didn't even mention that you get ad-free versions of all the shows. You wouldn't even hear this harangue. So please, if you will, support us, support what we do. We can't do it without you. twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you in advance for your support. Thanks to all the club members also who make all of this possible. Now to the back of the book. Paul Thurrott starts us off with his tip of the week.
I didn't do it. What? Oh.
I'm not guilty.
People probably remember that starting in Windows Vista, Microsoft had something called the Windows Experience Index Score, which was a series of score across CPU, GPU, I think it was disk, RAM, etc. That went away pretty quick, but the idea was you could look at those scores and determine which part of your PC you might want to upgrade. But actually the technology that's behind, or was behind WEI, the Windows Experience Index, is still available in Windows 11 today. It's just a command line utility. It's called the Windows System Assessment Tool, and the command line is WinSat, or more specifically WinSat Formal. I almost said Formal. I'm still in Mexico.
El Formal.
Which has a form. Go to a command line, type in WinSat Formal, let it do its thing. It will open another command line, runs all these tests, checks your CPU, your graphics, et cetera, et cetera. I think it dumps 5 files into a folder, which is basically C, Windows, Performance, WinSat, Data Store in the file system. And the one, you should actually look at all these things if you're, I guess it's 6 files, but if you're interested, but it's the biggest of those is the one that I'm referring to, where you get the modern version of that WEI score. And so if you open that, the biggest of those XML files, it will open in Edge by default, unless you've changed that. And scroll down, you'll see in brackets, it's WinSPR is the section. It's to the top, so it's easy. And you'll see its score number. So it's from 0 to 10. And on this particular laptop, which is a Lunar Lake, Core Ultra 7, Series 2, blah, 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 integrated, graphics, which are pretty good, actually. Overall system score, 8.5. Memory score, 9.9. CPU is 9.2. So this is all out of 10, obviously, right? And so video and code score really high, but Intel's done a good job actually of optimizing that. That kind of makes sense. And then graphics score overall is 8.5. I bet if I had, and then it says, it's funny, gaming score 9.9. I'm not sure where that comes from because, I don't know, DX9, DX10, pretty high too, but overall graphics 8.5. So
there's no GUI for this. It's just
yeah, not anymore.
Huh.
Yeah. So they don't have a GUI for this per se, but they are updating that page in settings, which is system about, and they do call out in cards at the top, like your storage, graphics card, RAM, and processor. So you can at least identify them. They don't give them scores, but at least it's easier to find than it used to be. But yeah, they used to have in the equivalent dialogue at the time in Windows Vista. It was, very, it was called out on purpose. The idea was you were going to look at this and maybe upgrade, but it's interesting to look at it. Excuse me. It's the, this is actually a pretty mainstream system. It's pretty good. But if you look through the other XML files you'll have more. Some of them are related directly to, gaming metrics, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some good information throughout those files. But the one that is most interesting to me is this thing because it is literally what they were doing before, but still available. And then this must have happened. Yeah, it was last Thursday. So Proton, my kind of favorite little tech company, obviously has a password manager, really an identity manager called Proton Pass that does 2FA codes if you wanted to, but I've always taken the stance that you want to do that within a separate app. And now they have a standalone authenticator app. So I took the time to see if I could switch over to fully, because I had been using a combination of Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. And Google Authenticator, the big draw for me was that it would sync these codes or these accounts and codes between all the machines through the cloud, right? And the little niggling problem there was that it wasn't end-to-end encrypted. So there was a possibility, I suppose there is a possibility that something could happen to that, but whatever. They're supposedly going to fix that. So Protons does exactly the same thing, except it is end-to-end encrypted. Plus it's Proton, not Google. So great. So I did switch over everything that I used. Google Authenticator, that's seamless. Google supports export easy. Microsoft does not. So if you're using Microsoft Authenticator, you can't actually export those codes, and you can't import anything. And well, I think there is actually a way to do like a column, or what do you call it, comma delimited file or something like that. But anyway, you cannot import it from that into Proton. So if you are going to switch, there's going to be a little bit of work there. And based on what I've seen so far, you're going to want to actually stick with the Microsoft Authenticator app for Microsoft accounts, because it has that really nice experience. You sign in, you just put in your username, your email address, hit enter. It asks you to prompt, gives you a number or sends you a number, you get a number and send it back, whatever it is, but you don't have to ever type in your password. And it's just kind of a nice interface. And all the third-party authenticators don't really do that with a Microsoft account. So most people probably have like one or two, right? Like you can have one for work, one for home, maybe at most. So it's not a big deal. But if you are using all of your Microsoft or all of your accounts doing 2FA through Microsoft Authenticator, that's a weekend project. So, but I like I said, I really like, I love Proton. I actually really like the interface of this app. I like, even like the fonts they chose are really nice. It's got a nice vibe to it. So, switching from Google was really seamless, and it's no big deal keeping, Microsoft Authenticator around. I was doing it anyway. So,
and you keeping it around because it's just hard to migrate off of?
Yeah. If Proton did what Microsoft does, I would just use Proton 100%, right? Like I don't know that they can't. I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't know. It's open source, right? So I don't know. I don't know what the secret sauce Microsoft uses here. I mean, it's fair to say it's possible. I just did this today. Like you are trying to authenticate against your Google account and you get different choices. It's like choose passkey and there's no passkey on this device or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, well, or for some reason it doesn't work with the one it wants you to do with the phone. And it's like your phone doesn't, whatever it is. So you get different choices. And one of them is with an app. And if you have like the Google app on your iPhone or like Gmail or whatever, you can actually just launch the app. And when you do, a UI comes up and it says, is this you? And you're like, yep. And usually that's all there is to it. But today, for maybe the first time, it actually gave me a choice of 3 numbers like Microsoft does. Wow. And I was like, oh, there you go. Like that's not bad. It's a good system. So yeah, the Microsoft thing, the thing that bugs me, the reason I wouldn't use that full time is just the sync thing. I know you can back up, but it doesn't do sync. And now that I know you can't like export it normally, it's like, guys, like, I mean, I don't know. You want to have a backdoor if you need it to get out.
And they have backdoor mechanisms. They're a pain in the butt, right? Yeah. Like,
yes, that's what
you could do a recovery. I've done the trial now of, okay, I dropped my phone in the ocean. I need to set up a new phone without migrating. How bad is this? And it's bad.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like it was architected almost for a different world, and they kind of made it, work. And it works. It works okay. It works fine. Like in use, honestly, it's fine.
And I'm right on the edge now, especially setting up these machines of going, do I just have to go down the passkey wave now?
Yes. Well, right. So this is the problem. So hopefully you're using Bitwarden, right? I'm not really sure like how that works, but hopefully what it can do is prompt you and say, hey, look, you have this list of accounts. And here's the 13 accounts that could have passkeys but don't. You might want to look at that. Or here are the 2 or 3 or whatever it is that have some 2FA that's better than a text message, and you're not using that. Maybe you should do that. Like that kind of proactive help from like a password manager can be really useful.
I would happily put all my passkeys in Bitwarden, but I still have other things popping up at me saying, "Can I do that passkey for you?"
Yes. God, there are so many problems with passkeys. I mean, passkeys are great. Portability is one of them, but it's not just that. There's a user experience problem, and it's actually tied to the thing I just said. I don't remember what device. So I open a laptop I have not used in a month because I've been away, and it's like, oh, you got to sign into your Google account again. You're like, great. I have a Google passkey on this computer. I have a Google passkey in my password manager. So obviously, when I choose, re-authenticate, it's going to give me one of those things. And it's like, do you want to use a passkey? You're like, you bet I do, baby. And then it comes up. It's like, all right, take a picture of your iPhone. You're like, wait, what? Then, so I'm like, okay. I mean, I can do that. So I'm like, okay. It's made a choice about where it's going to get the passkey. Like, just do it. Like it's on here. It's protected with Windows Hello. Like, this should be fine. And right now, it just varies. Even when there's a company like Google that honestly does a pretty good job with this, usually it will do that. It's like it's doing different types each time, and maybe that's good security. I don't know, but it's happened a bunch this year, right? It's like your phone, you're like, okay, and you like take a picture of the QR code. It's like, nope, there's no passkey. And you're like, come on, guys, you were supposed to make my life easier. What are you doing? I don't know.
So what were you using Microsoft's Authenticator before this? Or?
So I was using a combination of Google and Microsoft, and Microsoft specifically for the Microsoft accounts because it's great for that, and Google for everything else because it syncs. But now Proton does that as well, but it does it with an encryption, and it's Proton.
Yeah, so I use 2FAS, which they don't, I notice, put in this chart because it checks all the same boxes.
Oh, does it? Well, but that might, okay. But I mean, I'm not sure like how you make that list, right? Maybe it's because
these are the most popular, in fact, often when you are suggested a one-time authenticator, they just say Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. They don't even mention the other ones. I used Authy for a long time, but I like 2FAS.
Actually, Google's great. It's just,
lately I've been, the only thing I didn't like about Google was every time I set up a new phone, it was kind of a pain. I think now Google will export, right? And
no, it just syncs. You just sign
it will
in.
sync.
It's just
it
there.
Used to, and that's
if you're using the same account, it's just there.
Oh,
that's what I love. That's what I love about it.
It's saved to the account. Yeah. Now I just store everything in Bitwarden. I gave up on it. Yeah. Two different.
Yeah. Tools. So, and by the way, if you do switch to Proton Authenticator, anybody from any other authenticator app, it will prompt you. Google at the end when you export says, "Hey, do you want us to delete all this data?" I didn't do that at the time because I wanted to make sure it worked, but now it's like, like you should do that too. Just like you should get rid of your passwords in whatever password manager you were using if you switch to a new one. It's a tough step, but it's, it's one of those things you don't want this stuff just floating around out there.
When I migrated out of LastPass onto Bitwarden, there's a moment where I have an Exchange file of all of my passwords.
Yeah, that in plain text. Yeah.
It was a scary moment.
Yeah,
couldn't wait to delete that one.
Yep.
Don't leave that in your download folder, folks.
Get rid of the CSV.
That's one of the, that's right. When I exported the Google thing, it was like, do you want to export a file version? I'm like, sure. Because I'm like, I can put this in like private vault or whatever it's called on OneDrive. But then it's sitting there in my, like you said, the download folder in your phone. You're like, is there a more insecure place on earth than the download folder in my phone? Let me think. It's tough. You don't want to leave it there.
No. Actually, that's one our sponsors, Trellica. That's one of the things it does is says, let me just look if there's anything in the clear in your download folder.
Oh, a plain text file of all of your passwords. Yeah. Or all of your, the codes or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's so common that they actually check for that. Yep. All right. Time for Run As Radio. Mr. Richard Campbell.
Yeah. I brought back my friend Christina Wheeler, who's now a Microsoft employee. And in the theme side of this, I've been looking for case studies around successful M365 deployments, M365 Copilot deployments specifically, because there's lots of people telling me I got to use M365 Copilot. And every time I talk to sysadmins about it, they're like, dude, I have to get my quote unquote data estate in order. And nobody's data estate is in order. But that's not true. The financial services industry, because of its regulatory requirements, has pretty good controls over their their data estate, so to speak. They are big on purview and data loss prevention and all of these kinds of tools. And so Christine has been part of the consulting teams that have been helping these financial services move ahead with these things, and they're having substantial success. And it's because they are just that little bit more organized because they're required to be. So,
nothing wrong with regulation, folks.
Well,
when it comes to your money,
side effect
right?
of regulation is these pieces. You have tagged your data sets, and you're big on archiving because it's the law, and you've got all these sorts of things in place so that when they aim Copilot at certain areas of data, it pulls up good results, and you don't have this security by obscurity effect, which is not allowed for financial services. Like, they can't do that. So that to me was exciting. Like, in the end, I can't teach you how to do this per se. Christine certainly run down certain elements, but it's like, look, there are places where they're having success, and the place where they're having success is where they've taken data security really serious.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
That's, you're trying to lift the bar up a little bit more and help people be successful with these tools. If they're keen to use them, they're just trying to figure out what's the right way to go about it.
Now, this is the part of the program, like in The Wizard of Oz, where it goes from black and white to color, our whiskey segment.
So the cruise I was just on and missed the show, although there were a couple of fans of the show on there said, "Are you going to do the show from the boat?" And I'm like,
"Oh, nice.
No, I'm not."
That's awesome.
And maybe I could have, maybe not. I don't know. So it was if it's a cruise ship, like everything's questionable there.
Yeah, but I've done shows from a cruise ship. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's
hard work.
There was about 20 of us that all went for our friend's 50th birthday.
Oh, nice.
And one of the activities was a whiskey tasting. So everybody was on me to go to the whiskey tasting. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to a whiskey tasting.
I've tasted whiskey. I know whiskey.
They're like, no, you have to go. You have to go. It's like, you people just want me to torment the whiskey guy that's there. And they're like,
yeah, you would be, wouldn't you? Because this is just some guy who got
want.
nominated to do this, right? He's not,
Yeah.
So it's
anyway,
a brown color. I think it's alcoholic.
He had a very good script. It was just wrong.
Oh no!
Anyway,
you went.
I got bullied into it, and the whiskey they were tasting was the Macallan Color Collection, the 12, the 15, and the 18.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, funny, we just did a Macallan 18 just a few weeks ago because I'd gotten one as a thank you present from a conference that I'd helped to MC, and so I'm kind of sad to go back to Macallan so quickly, but I thought it was an interesting story, and I've ended up writing to the fellow my notes on this particular collection of whiskeys.
Not in front of the rest of the people.
No, I may have said a few things while we were in front of them, but that's fine. What are you going to do? And then I ended up in a huddle with a bunch of the other tasters, not just my friends, asking questions about whiskeys.
Oh, you became the expert. Love it. Yeah. Love it. Well, you are the expert.
Yeah, I put the time in it. So we've talked about Macallan. I mean, right off the bat, it's like, why, when Alexander Reed sets it up in 1824, and that's the number they always use. Why 1824? Because the excise tax goes in 1823, and it becomes illegal to make whiskey if you don't have a license. So he got the license in 1824. The reality, of course, he leased the land in 1819, and it was always barley farms. In fact, through archaeology on the site, there's been barley grown in that place for 3 or 4 millennia. So they've been making whiskey for a long time. In fact, and of course, he didn't call it the Macallan Distillery. He called it the Eichels Distillery after Easter Eichels House, which goes back to the 1500s. So more or less, you're talking about this area been growing barley. And when you have excess barley, you make it into booze, and you have for ages.
What else are you going to do with it?
Yeah, of course. But it becomes Macallan when Roderick Kemp takes it over in 1892. And he actually renames it to Macallan Glenlivet. The name Glenlivet doesn't get dropped off until the 1980s. And it's Roderick Kemp, who had previously run Talisker. And Talisker he'd gotten into the sherry casking thing. And that's what Macallan is known for, is sherry casking, right? That's the big deal. So I thought we'd better revisit sherry, because what they're doing here in the color collection is a little bit different. And we've talked about this in various parts before, but I want to get into some brass tacks about what it really means to be a sherry cast whiskey. So sherry is a wine made in Spain, a particular set of regions. They call it the Triangle. There's really two kinds. There's dry sherry and there's sort of sweet sherry. The dry sherry is considered the high-end stuff made with the Palomino grape. It was originally fermented in barrels going back hundreds of years. Today, it's mostly large facilities that are making them, so it's all in stainless steel tanks. It's considered dry sherry because they fully ferment it. That is to say, they consume all of the sugar from the grape. In the sweeter versions, and there's generally two species, the Moscatel and the Pedro Jimenez, they stop fermentation to leave sugar in the wine by adding fortification to it, which kills the bacteria. And so you get a sweeter product. And why fortification? Well, one is to knock out the yeast, but the other is to knock out bacteria in general. Ports and sherries were invented largely as fortified wine because otherwise the wine would spoil. By raising the alcohol level to about 15 to 18%, you keep the bacteria out so it can be stored for longer. I mean, before the era of refrigeration and so forth, this is how you kept your alcohol from going bad. Typically wine. Now, sherry gets a little weird, right? Because sherry, they actually discovered that there is different ways to age sherry. If you just age it in barrels, it tends to lose color as it ages. It gets paler and paler, and that's what they call the oloroso aging. But if you age it, if you allow a bacterial film to grow over top of the sherry, they call flor, it'll actually anaerobically age. And so it'll keep its color while still getting that smooth flavor. And so the fino style of sherry uses flor, where the oloroso, it doesn't. And so if they know they're going to make oloroso, they'll raise the alcohol level to the point where it kills all bacteria, around 18%. And it will lose color over time. Where the phenos, they only raise it to about 15%, which is strong enough to kill a lot of the bad bacteria, but not so much to kill the flor, and the flor is maintained. And where this flor hangs out is in the Solera. So the process of making sherry, and we've talked about this before, is this bodega style barreling where they have 3 layers of these large 600-liter barrels. Now, in the very early days, it was European oak. But as soon as American oak was available in the early 1800s, as the United States began to form and started trading with Europe, of course, they were using barrels for storing everything, right? That was the way barrels were done. And it wouldn't take very long before folks found out that the species of oak, what we know as American oak today, tasted better than European oak. And so long before the whiskey industry used American oak barrels, the sherry industry used American oak. They paint their barrels matte black so they can see if they're leaking because they keep them for decades. And this 3-layer stacking, the bottom layer is the most mature. It's been around the longest. And then there's a second layer and a top layer. And again, we've talked about this before. When they're going to go do a bottling, they only take about half of the sherry out of each bottom cask to go into bottling. And then the middle tier gets partially drained down to the lower tier, and then the upper tier gets partially drained in the middle tier, and then the top tier gets the new make added to it.
This is a sherry aging barn we visited in Spain, in Cadiz.
Yeah.
And this was what they made Oloroso. It was incredible.
And you can see how big those barrels are, right? They're instead of the typically 250 liter that we see with bourbon and with whiskey, you're seeing 500 and 600 liter barrels. They're very large. They're heavy.
Yeah.
But also, sherry is not supposed to taste oaky.
Right.
And so they don't look, the alcohol level is low enough that you're not having the same solvent effects. You're not pulling the phenols out of the wood the same way you would with a grain spirit. And they also keep the wood for really long. Most sherry makers will tell you 20-year-old barrels are still too young. That barrels don't get really good in the Solera until they're 50 years old.
Look how ancient these barrels look.
Yeah.
And they look Middle Ages.
Yeah. They want 50-plus-year-old barrels in there.
These were,
Which brings us back to this whole conversation about sherry aging whiskey, because the sherry guys are not letting their old barrels go. That's just not a thing. Oh, they never have.
Good point.
So what is sherry aging actually about? It's about shipping the barrels. So these bodega casks were never made available to whiskey makers, ever. But back in the day, in the 1800s, the way you shipped sherry was in transport casks, also 500 liters, also American oak, but they were new make barrels, and you only put it in there to ship them. And typically they were only in there for 6 months to maybe 2 years. The amount of time they get made up in batches, so they sit for a while, then they get loaded on ships and they travel for a while, then they get unloaded into warehouse and they sit for a while, then they go out to distributors where they sit for a while. And typically you again would send your servant down to the whiskey or the sherry purveyor with your decanter to fill a few bottles because glass was so valuable back in those days. And so everything was moved around by barrel. And if you were a big enough place, maybe you bought a whole barrel yourself, and who knows how long it would take to use it. So it would age to some degree in those barrels, in these storage barrels. But once the barrel was empty, what do you do with it? And so the first records we have of the Scots using ex-transport casks is like 1814. So this has been going on a really long time. And these transport casks were being used to age whiskey because what else to do with the barrels? They would just use them, and people like the flavor, right? However, whiskey gets way more popular than sherry, and bottles start becoming less expensive once you get to the industrial age in the early 1900s when we have 5 and 7 year olds helping them make glass bottles. And so those barrels start to get harder and harder to come by. These just don't use transport casks. And by 1986, the Spanish simply said, you cannot ship in barrels anymore. You must ship in bottles. But long before that, you already had the crisis. By the end of the 1800s, you're already in trouble with there's just not enough sherry casks to grow around. And so people innovate. In the 1920s, a guy named William Lowry who figured out that he could take a bare wooden cask, typically American oak, but didn't have to be. And he'd put about maybe, it's a 250 or 300 liter barrel. He put about 30 liters of sherry into it. And then he'd use steam to pressurize it over a few weeks, and it would force the sherry into the wood. And that got pretty much the same effect. And so for many years, that's how they did it. And then they went even a step further. There was a very thick wine syrup used in the sherry business called Paxarette. And so when they started buying that stuff, and you'd literally put a scoop of this into the barrel before you prep the barrel, and it would give you the sherry flavor as well. Although that got banned in the 1990s because it was a bit more of just a treatment or a flavorant rather than actually coming from the barrel. So since the 1970s, this is largely what they've been doing, and now it's the only way since the 80s when they basically made it impossible to do it any other way. Seasoning sherry casks is what's going on. So the whiskey maker specifies the barrel, the type of wood, the size, how much the inside of the barrel is toasted, all of the specifications. The sherry maker makes that barrel on their behalf and then fills it with sherry wine, probably not fortified at all, and lets it sit for 6 months up to maybe 30 months. It obviously costs more the longer you let it sit. And in fact, if you only let it sit for 6 months, they'll likely take that liquid out of the barrel and put it into another barrel. They'll do it several times. But this liquid does not become fine sherry. It typically only becomes sherry vinegar. So the quality of the sherry is nowhere near the same. But this has been the reality for 50 years. This is what they call sherry seasoned casks. So virtually every sherry cask whiskey I've ever tasted comes from this era of how they actually made these barrels. That they were never, it was never the fictional story of fine sherry barrels being taken from the sherry distillery and used for whiskey. It was always just a transport cask. It was only a year or two ever. And now it's even more specialized in exactly that way. And the barrel may be reused several times. So it's just a flavor. Liking back to what the Canadians were doing with their 1/11th rule, where they just put sherry in the bottle, under like 4 or 5% and call it, that's still whiskey, close enough. Because that's what you're doing anyway. It is interesting to think in terms that all of these casks were American oak, because the utilization of American oak from bourbon casks doesn't come till after World War II. Right? That's as the American industry explodes post World War II with the Bretton Woods and the whole export model. That's when you start seeing these ex-bourbon casks appearing in whiskey production. But long before that, sherry casks were made with American oak and had those flavors, and that's one of the things that people like. Now, Macallan has been a very successful brand. You know, in many ways, I think I said this when we were talking about the original 18 sherry cask. This is the first expensive whiskey you typically buy because they've done such a good job of maintaining this sense of brand and quality and so forth. But it also created some tremendous problem for them too, because it did mean they sold far more whiskey than they could possibly produce. And so where they originally, you know, going back to Roderick Kemp in 1892, like for 100 years, they just made sherry cask whiskey. But as the sherry cask got harder and harder to get, and they needed more and more, you know, it's a real problem when you're selling a lot of Macallan 12 that you didn't lay up enough 12 years ago. I don't think you can rush this that fast, right? Like you can't catch up. And so in the early 2000s, Macallan started experimenting with ways to try and age more quickly and to make other versions. And so the Fine Oak series that got introduced, which is in 2004, was actually aging in bourbon casks. They're far less expensive. They're far more plentiful. And they would do a year of finishing in these sherry casks. The real crisis came in 2012. In 2012, they produced a line they called the Color Series. They actually called it the 1824 Collection, but everybody else referred to it as Color Series because they had no age statements on them. They were just colors based on the color of the liquid.
I know that these are marked travel versions.
Yes, because they're all for duty free. But
and you've told us never to buy anything at the duty free store.
And I'm going to tell you it again. And I'll tell you why in just a second.
Okay.
But before this color series, this earlier one that they called the 1824 collection, they didn't have age statements on it. They were just called Gold, Amber, Sienna, and Ruby. And they were, this is in 2012, $57, $71, $103, and $184. They were not that popular because the other thing that the industry has done is convinced you that age matters. Right? That they've pitched this idea so hard about aging whiskey that a 12-year-old is better than a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old is better than a 12-year-old, which may or may not be true. You know, these are marketing tactics. And so Macallan, in their effort when they just couldn't actually use the age declarations because there's rules around them, tried these no age statements ones, and they didn't go particularly well.
Well, this one's browner.
Well, and just talking about aging in general, this whole idea of there has a minimum requirement for aging is only barely 100 years old.
Oh, interesting.
Scots got to this first. The original act was called the Immature Spirits Restriction Act of 1950. And it said that whiskey had to be aged at least 2 years. In 1916, they raised it to 3 years. Now, why did they do that? Well, think of the name, Immature Spirits Restriction Act. What they were actually fighting was cheap Irish whiskey, the whiskey with an E. Because remember the coffee still? Coffee still invented in 1870 in Ireland, and it made making alcohol really inexpensive and fast.
And immature.
And as there's more and more cheap alcohol, you have more and more public drunkenness and so forth. And now that stuff gets associated with poverty and low-class behavior and so forth. And so the Scottish, to differentiate themselves from the Irish, they drop the E out of the name whiskey, and they go in with these rules about you got to age it, you got to follow all these rules. Those rules will get advanced even further into the Scottish Whiskey Act as UK law in 1933, which is to get the barley rules and the distillation rules and so on. And then there's been continued updates. There were more updates in the 80s. The current version, which they call the Scottish Whiskey Regulations, are from 2009, big on EU VQA compliance so that they can protect it internationally. But the actual we now know that age statements are required to be the youngest thing in the bottle. So if you see a Macallan 12, the youngest thing in that bottle is at least 12 years old. There might be something older in it because they got to try to get to a flavor profile, but it's 12. That was only a legal requirement in Scotland in 1989. They've been putting age statements on whiskey for a really long time. And in the 1930s, 1940s, you wouldn't usually have a year on it. It would say old or well matured. And typically they were like in the 5 to 10 year range. It didn't really get to the really old stuff till later. But I just want to remind you that all of this is marketing. It's 100% marketing. Sure, we put rules around it after the fact, but it was what will make you pay more for a bottle of whiskey. And believe me, it's worked for Macallan. Macallan is one of the largest distillery complexes in the world. They rebuilt their entire distillery. Actually, they built it beside. The old distillery is still there, shut down. They're talking about starting it back up again. But they make 15 million liters a year in the new facility, which they took them 4 years to build. 2014 and 2018, they built this huge new facility, 36 stills. Like, it is a beast.
It has a great reputation, though, right?
It does. Their reputation's impeccable.
And I noticed these color collections are dated. They do have years on them.
Yes, because they've only made them for a couple of years. This particular series only started in 2023. So let me talk about 3 different lines of whiskey, and we'll finish with the color collection. So the classic, which we call the sherry casks. There's lots of different years, but let's just compare the 12, the 15, and the 18. Yeah. And I did the 18 a few weeks ago. It was a $400 bottle of whiskey. The 15 is about $155 to 12-year-olds about $85. Now, those are the straight sherry cask editions. They also made the Fine Oak series, but those are now gone. The current version of the mixed barrelings, where they do both bourbon and sherry, are currently called the double casks. And there's a 12, a 15, and 18 that are $72, $175, and $350 respectively. Slightly cheaper than the sherry cask, but only slightly. In fact, the 15 is more expensive. And I'll tell you why. Because it tastes the best. And so they've actually upped the price on that. So the color collection. So what's distinctive about the color collection? Well, as it says, it is aged in sherry seasoned casks. That's all it's aged in. Now, the barrels they've actually used, we've dug in a little deeper, found that it's about 90% American oak, 10% European oak. So they're using a combination of caskings, so both of them have been soaked in sherry for a certain amount of time. How long, we do not know. But the prices at select duty-frees, the 12-year-old is $92, the 15-year-old is $186, and the 18-year-old is $390. They cost as much, if not more, than the traditional sherry casks version. Now, I tasted all 3. The 15 tasted the best by far, and none of them are bad, but none of them are great either. And for the money, just buy the sherry cask. Like, why? You can save a little bit by going to the double cask, and arguably it's a better made product. But in general, it just reminds me once again, buying these whiskeys at a duty-free is a mistake. They're designed for people who forgot to get someone a gift. So that's
why the bottles are so pretty.
Yeah. You know what? If you forgot to get someone a gift, in the taxi on the way over, stop at a Total Wine or a Bevmo and buy a real bottle. Don't buy at the duty-free. You're wasting money.
Somebody wants to know how much you spend on whiskey.
Well, I get given a lot of whiskey.
Yeah, you don't have to spend anymore.
Yeah, but admittedly, I do. I spend some. And most of the time when I'm buying a bottle of whiskey, it's $100, right? It's a 12.
Yeah.
I don't really try and buy old whiskeys.
So it's the 30-year-old Macallan from the color collection. I mean, it's a 30-year-old whiskey, right?
$4,000? Yeah.
$4,000.
Which begs the question, how, when they've only been making the color edition for 2 years?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I wonder is this not them going through a set of barrels that wouldn't make it in the sherry cask edition, wasn't good enough, and saying, let's make something else. You know what? We'll sell in the duty free. That's what we'll do.
That's hysterical.
I'm not going to make fun of Macallan. They've done an unbelievable job. Their product is good. Just don't buy into this branding. Taste it. Taste it blind if you can, and see what you like and enjoy that. And don't, and try and resist the 18. It's just too much money.
Yeah. Of course, that's why they sell it on a cruise ship, right? That's the whole point of that.
And that whole place is a big floating duty free, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's just a floating. That's what it is. It's a whole duty free boat. The whole boat's duty free.
Yeah, whole boats.
It's a tax avoidance
in Norwalk. That's what a cruise ship is.
I remember one of the first cruises. It might have been the first cruise I ever went on in 1981. We went to St. Thomas, in the Virgin Islands, and everybody gets on the boat with a giant box of booze.
Yep.
You go into town. The whole downtown is structured to have you buy booze and jewelry. Mm-hmm. And then you get back on the boat with your...
It's like Sonoma.
And they say, are you going shopping today? This is the day. We're in St. Thomas. I don't know if it's still that way, but... Yeah, Sonoma, there's good stuff to buy in Sonoma.
Sure.
All right, kids. You have done your duty to God and Microsoft.
He said duty.
Duty. Not duty free. You are duty compelled to join us every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. We stream it live. If you want to watch it live, you don't have to, but then you can chat with us live, and we always have a lot of fun in the chat room. Of course, Discord is the first place to go, because if you're a club member, you get, behind the velvet rope access, including, often a good amount of conversation before and after the show that has nothing to do with the show. Like, where's my cat, who is still at large?
So it didn't turn up. You did your snap.
You know what
shake?
I realize? It might have to do with the fact that I'm wearing a shirt with dogs on it. I forgot. She might be scared of me. There's all animals on my shirt.
There you go.
This is starting out like an episode of Dateline. Eventually it's going to be like, Leo, we know you did something to the cat.
I'm just, Lisa comes home tomorrow. She said, it's okay. You can let the cat out. I said, if I let the cat out and it gets lost, you're going to blame me for the rest of my life. She said, no, I won't. Well, now we're going to find out.
Yeah.
I've never known a wife to be vindictive. So
No. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining us. You can watch live. Oh, I didn't mention, not just in the Discord, but YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Xbox. No, X.com, not Xbox. X. You could probably watch this on the Xbox, but we don't know how. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Kick. All of those stream us live every Wednesday. Did I say Tuesday? Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at our website, twit.tv/dubdub. For Windows Weekly. And let's see, where else? Oh, there's a YouTube channel where you can get actually, that's great if you want to share a little clip, like a whiskey clip. In fact, if you want to see all of the whiskey clips up to it takes us a while, so maybe like 4 weeks ago, just go to, what is it? Something from my closet?
Yeah, something weird from mycloset.com. Yeah.
Something weird from mycloset.com. And that is the playlist, the YouTube playlist with all the delicious whiskey.
I mean, you can just find it on YouTube as well. But
yes, somebody says we should name the show Windows Whiskey. I don't know why we didn't think of that.
Yeah, somebody applied AI
bottle
graphics
of
to that page.
20-year-old Richard Campbell in the background on that one.
Oh, we're up to 94 episodes published. People have been
wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's incredible.
How far behind are we now?
Not too far.
No,
Kevin's doing this. He's out in his spare time.
He's working hard. That's the truth.
Yeah. There's also the best way probably to get any of our shows is subscribe in your favorite podcast player. It's free to do that. You get it automatically. You don't have to think about it. There's always audio and video for almost everything we do. And if you would leave us a good review, maybe even 5 stars, that would be nice. We'd appreciate the support. Thanks to our club members. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. Become a premium member. I am. There's great stuff on that website, always. You can also find his books at leanpub.com, and you get a free copy of the Field Guide to Windows 11 if you sign up for his newsletter at what is it? Is it still? Have you moved it yet?
Not yet. Mid couple of weeks, I think.
Couple of weeks. So, 2 weeks. In fact, this would be a good time to sign up because you'll get it. You'll continue to get it no matter where Paul goes.
I think we all know where I'm going.
But the bad place, the hot place.
It's warm, obviously.
It's going to be warm there. Richard Campbell is at runasradio.com. That's where you'll find Run As Radio, his podcast, and .NET Rocks, the podcast he does with Carl Franklin. And of course, you'll find them both here every Wednesday. Oh, yeah. Hide yourself.
I don't know why I'm so low. Or I don't know.
Doesn't matter. The show's over, Paul. Don't even.
I know. You got to fix it now. You gotta just run by
Not the time.
Here we go.
You're going to be all right.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.